Good evening, fellow travelers. Tonight, we shall embark upon a tranquil and deliberate expedition through the venerable realms of ancient myth and the serene annals of history. Please dim your illumination and nestle comfortably beneath your chosen covering, allowing the clamor and exigencies of the day to recede into a distant echo. Picture, if you will, an epoch preceding the ubiquitous presence of digital streaming platforms before the advent of television, and even prior to the widespread availability of printed literature. In this bygone era, narratives traversed the ether, conveyed from one individual's lips to another's ear, meticulously transmitted across generations, much like cherished culinary traditions. The Hellenic people of antiquity disseminated their intricate mythology in this fashion, not through dazzling cinematic effects or compelling serialized sagas, but rather through spoken words that softly permeated fire-lit chambers and communal outdoor assemblies. Were Greek mythology to manifest as a contemporary streaming series, it would undoubtedly feature a rich tapestry of multifaceted characters, improbable champions, and intricate narrative threads that intertwine with unforeseen outcomes. However, the initial method of its conveyance was considerably more measured and intentional, akin to the unhurried application of golden honey upon warm, freshly baked bread. Let us now unwind our minds and immerse ourselves in this world at the leisurely cadence it so richly merits. The inaugural sequence of this profound narrative would depict a scene of Genesis, not through explosive computer-generated imagery, but as a silent emergence from primordial chaos, a vast and yawning emptiness. It was neither aqueous expanse, nor terrestrial mass, nor atmospheric domain, merely pure, unactualized potential. From this serene nullity arose Gaia, the personification of Earth, who gracefully extended her corporeal form to sculpt the majestic mountains and verdant valleys that one might encounter during a peaceful afternoon ramble. She was not merely composed of geological formations and fertile topsoil within the mythological framework. Rather, she embodied the very essence of rock and soil, a patient and enduring presence. As you recline more deeply into your comfortable repose, envision Gaia giving birth to Uranus, the celestial firmament, who would subsequently become her consort. Together, they engendered the Titans, beings who traversed the nascent world not with the frantic urgency characteristic of denizens of our modern metropolises, but with the measured, unhurried gait of entities for whom eternity stretches boundlessly before them. The Titans did not consult timepieces or harbor anxieties about punctuality. They experienced each fleeting instant with profound fullness, their ponderous footsteps deliberate and measured as they walked upon the youthful planet. Among these colossal titans resided Kronos, destined to eventually depose his father, Uranus. This overthrow was not orchestrated through spectacular martial confrontations worthy of a season's climactic episode, but rather through a protracted, gradual stratagem executed with the unwavering patience of an artisan meticulously knitting a garment, stitch by careful stitch. Kronos bided his time, awaiting the opportune moment. Such patient waiting was a concept the ancient Greeks comprehended intimately. In a world devoid of instantaneous digital communication or rapid transit, the act of waiting was simply an intrinsic element of life's fundamental structure. And then came Kronos' progeny, the revered deities of Olympus. Zeus and his divine siblings did not dramatically erupt onto the cosmic stage accompanied by thunderous musical fanfares. They emerged slowly, with careful deliberation, much like tender seedlings pushing through the earth after a gentle vernal shower. Zeus, who would ultimately assume the mantle of king of the gods, spent his formative years concealed within a cavern on the island of Crete, hearkening to the soft, rhythmic dripping of water from stalactites and the distant, gentle bleating of the goat Amalthea, his divine wet nurse. The cave was cool and dimly lit, remarkably similar to the ambient conditions of your current surroundings. Zeus would remain for extended periods, simply absorbing the sounds around him, the subtle rustling of foliage outside, the quiet respiration of his protectors. There was no impetuosity, no pressing exigency, only the gradual procession of days, each seamlessly merging into the next. When Zeus ultimately confronted his progenitor, Kronos, it was not a conflict confined to a single episode's duration. It was a decennial conflict, the Titanomachy, that unfolded with the deliberate geological pace of shifting continental plates. Engagements were interspersed with prolonged interludes of stillness, strategic deliberations that spanned multiple days, and serene nights, during which combatants from both factions gazed upon the identical celestial constellations, contemplating their individual places within the vast cosmos. Following Zeus's triumphant ascendancy, he and his siblings apportioned the world among themselves. This division was not conducted within a corporate boardroom with dramatic pronouncements. They drew lots, a simple act governed by chance, accepting their respective domains with the quiet dignity of those who comprehend that immense responsibility manifests in myriad forms. Zeus claimed the celestial heavens, Poseidon the boundless seas, and Hades the subterranean underworld. No ostentatious pomp, merely profound acceptance. Let us now pause and envision Mount Olympus, not as a bustling nerve center of frantic divine activity, but as a realm where the very fabric of time flows with a different rhythm. The gods did not precipitously rush from one crisis to another. They reposed within their resplendent golden halls, partaking of nectar that bore the flavor of sun-warmed honey and blossoms that unfurl solely beneath the most delicate moonlight. Their conversations meandered gracefully, like a slow-moving river, touching upon subjects both profound and mundane with equally unhurried interest. Hera, Zeus's esteemed spouse, would dedicate entire afternoons to the meticulous arrangement of floral displays within her private chambers, selecting each individual bloom with deliberate precision, savoring the soft texture of its petals between her fingers, and inhaling fragrances so subtle that only a goddess could discern them. Imagine her hands moving with the languid grace of clouds, transforming shapes as she crafted arrangements destined to endure for decades, never wilting, never losing their vibrant hue. Athena, the sagacious goddess of wisdom, did not amass knowledge through frantic study sessions or rapid digital inquiries. She contemplated intricate concepts for centuries, turning ideas over in her discerning mind as one might gently rotate smooth river stones within the palm of one's hand. She would sit beneath an olive tree, her sacred botanical emblem, and listen to the ethereal whisper of its silver-green leaves for hours, discovering profound insights within the silent spaces between sounds. And Apollo, the radiant god of music, among his many other domains, did not compose hurried melodies for distracted audiences. His divine music unfolded with the patient progression of changing seasons. Each note afforded ample space to fully resonate before the subsequent one was introduced. To experience Apollo's lyre was to transcend all perception of temporal passage, to exist solely within the gentle, flowing current of sound. Were this a contemporary streaming series, we might be impelled to hasten towards the more thrilling episodes. Perseus's audacious decapitation of Medusa, Theseus's courageous confrontation with the Minotaur. However, in the original accounts, these heroes spent considerably more time immersed in quotidian moments. Perseus traversing dusty thoroughfares, his sandals gradually succumbing to wear. Theseus sitting in profound silence aboard a vessel, observing the horizon blur between the boundless sea and the expansive sky. The heroes of Greek mythology were not perpetually engaged in combat or romantic entanglements. They prepared simple repasts over crackling campfires, meticulously mended their garments, and lay awake through the night, listening to the nocturnal chorus of insects beyond their windows. They grappled with doubts that crept in slowly, like encroaching evening shadows, rather than dramatic crises of faith that resolve neatly within a 45-minute segment, commercials notwithstanding. Let us reflect upon Odysseus, whose arduous homeward voyage from Troy consumed a full decade. Modern adaptations tend to emphasize the Cyclops, the Sirens, and the more sensational encounters. Yet, the majority of Odysseus's epic journey was replete with quieter instances, observing the celestial movements of stars for navigation, feeling the weathered texture of the wooden railing beneath his calloused hands, recounting ancient tales to his crew as they sailed through placid waters. Imagine days at sea where absolute tranquility reigned, punctuated only by the rhythmic dipping of oars into the water, the creaking lament of the ship's hull, and the briny taste of salt in the air. Odysseus would dedicate these days to mending sails or simply observing the intricate dance of light upon the waves, his mind gently oscillating between poignant memories of home and a profound acceptance of the present moment. When the gods chose to intervene in human affairs, their actions were frequently subtle, not typically manifested through dramatic thunderbolts or booming celestial pronouncements. More often, they might assume the guise of a traveler encountered on a winding road, offering sage counsel delivered in an unassuming voice. Or they might influence events through serendipitous coincidences, a dropped coin that prompts a hero to turn down an unexpected byway, a chance encounter that irrevocably alters the trajectory of a life. The ancient Greeks understood that the vast majority of existence unfolds within these gentle, unremarkable moments. Their myths faithfully reflected this profound truth. The spectacular occurrences were rare, isolated islands emerging from a boundless ocean of ordinary days, of routine actions performed with meticulous care and unwavering attention. As you continue to relax, perhaps drifting toward the serene threshold of slumber, ponder how the Hellenic people perceived time itself, not as a resource to be managed or maximized, but as a majestic river flowing at its own inherent pace. They embraced its current, neither struggling against its force nor attempting to impede its flow for future utility. They simply existed within its embrace, attending to the myriad small details that collectively constitute a life lived with purpose and appreciation. What would our contemporary world resemble if we approached it with this unhurried Greek sensibility? If we devoted time to noticing the subtle interplay of light and shadow across our kitchen tables, or the nuanced expressions that flicker across a loved one's countenance during an everyday dialogue, what profound insights might we uncover in the interstitial spaces between our meticulously scheduled activities? Perhaps there lies profound wisdom in this more deliberate approach to narrative, this willingness to linger in moments that do not necessarily advance the central plot, but rather deepen our understanding of the world and our intrinsic place within it. As you rest here, listening, perhaps you are experiencing a fleeting glimpse of that ancient Greek approach to time, present, attentive, and utterly unhurried. In our forthcoming shared journey, we shall encounter an individual who profoundly understood the virtues of patience and meticulous attention to intricate detail. A master craftsman whose skilled hands fashioned wonders, yet whose most significant accomplishment may well have been the quiet moments dedicated to mentoring his son. Daedalus of Athens awaits us, not with thrilling exploits, but with the subtle enchantment of creation that unfolds within the profound silence of focused endeavor, as we persist in our gentle exploration through the more tranquil corners of Greek mythology. Let us now delve into the life of a character whose appellation may resonate with you, yet whose everyday existence frequently escapes detailed examination in modern renditions. Daedalus of Athens, primarily etched into memory for his monumental setbacks and triumphs, the intricate labyrinth, the ephemeral wings of wax and feathers, spent the preponderance of his days as a weary artisan, striving to navigate the relentless demands of each 24-hour cycle. Envision Daedalus stirring awake before the first hint of dawn, not with a dramatic flourish or a surge of purposeful energy, but with the deliberate, unwilling emergence of an individual perpetually deprived of sufficient slumber. His Athenian workshop was a humble affair, a diminutive edifice boasting uneven flagstone floors, polished smooth in certain areas by countless years of measured pacing. The nascent morning light would pierce through slender apertures, illuminating motes of dust, performing an ethereal dance in the ambient air, and casting a glow upon the assorted implements of his diverse vocations. Daedalus embodied what we might presently term a polymath, a sculptor, an architect, an innovator, an engineer. However, the Hellenic populace did not categorize individuals in such a manner. To them, he was simply a master craftsman, a creator of objects both aesthetically pleasing and profoundly utilitarian. His diurnal routine would commence with the prosaic rite of kindling a modest blaze in a corner of his atelier, not for theatrical impact, but to heat a plain vessel of water for an herbal infusion concocted from desiccated flora gathered from the undulating hillsides beyond the city precincts. Whilst anticipating the water's gradual warming, he would meticulously trace his fingers over his instruments, assessing the keenness of a chisel's edge, lubricating the wooden haft of a mallet, and assiduously arranging and rearranging articles upon his workbench. These serene preparatory intervals were never hurried. They were executed with the methodical motions of someone who had reiterated the identical actions innumerable times before. The citizenry of Athens recognized Daedalus not as a legendary persona, but as the fatigued gentleman often observed, ambling slowly through the agora in the twilight hours, his hands indelibly stained with clay, pigment, or wood particulate. They would extend their salutations, and he would reciprocate with a curt nod, frequently too engrossed in contemplation of some intricate design challenge or structural conundrum to engage in protracted discourse. Daedalus had a familial relation, his nephew Talos, sometimes referred to as Perdix in subsequent narratives, who served as his apprentice. The dynamic between them was not characterized by a dramatic mentorship punctuated by rousing exhortations. Instead, It largely comprised comfortable silences, punctuated by intermittent directives. Present me with that diminutive chisel. Observe the technique with which I conjoin these two sections. You have rendered this angle excessively acute. It necessitates a more curvilinear finish. On an archetypal day, Daedalus might dedicate extensive hours to meticulously carving a wooden effigy of Athena destined for a local sanctuary. The labor was far from glamorous. It entailed the painstaking removal of minuscule wood shavings, the continuous verification and re-verification of proportions, and the occasional stepping back to appraise the piece from a fresh vantage point. His dorsal region would ache from prolonged stooping over his handiwork, yet he seldom registered the discomfort until the close of the day when he would finally straighten, feeling the vehement protestations of his musculature. The statue would demand weeks for its culmination. There were no instantaneous flashes of inspiration, no singular moment when the raw material abruptly transmuted from an inert block into a vibrant work of art. It was an incremental journey of unveiling, the figure gradually emerging from the timber through patient, reiterative exertion. Occasionally, Daedalus would toil for extensive periods, only to excise an amount of substance that could comfortably repose in the palm of his hand. Midday would find him partaking of a Spartan repast. Bread, olives, perhaps a morsel of cheese. Not within the opulent setting of a lavish feast, but seated upon a simple stool within his workshop, his mind still preoccupied with the intricacies of rendering a wooden joint more robust, or achieving the perfect curvature in a slab of marble. Sometimes he would altogether neglect his meal, the sustenance remaining untouched as he became utterly immersed in resolving some minor technical quandary. The historical accounts inform us that Daedalus was the pioneer in conceiving numerous implements: the saw, the axe, the gimlet, a specific type of boring tool. Yet these innovations did not manifest as sudden epiphanies of genius. They germinated from innumerable hours of exasperation, from persistently endeavoring to surmount specific obstacles that surfaced in his daily professional endeavors. He might dedicate an entire afternoon to attempting to sever a piece of wood in a particular fashion, encountering repeated failures until ultimately making a slight adjustment to his methodology or his tool to attain the desired outcome. His nephew Talos exhibited considerable aptitude as a craftsman. One day, whilst perambulating along the littoral, the young man discovered the mandibular bone of a serpent and was inspired to fashion a saw by emulating its serrated structure in iron. When he presented his invention to his uncle, Daedalus did not respond with immediate commendation or dramatic envy, as some mythological accounts suggest. Instead, he scrupulously examined the implement in silence, tested its edge with his digit, applied it to a piece of discarded wood, and then returned it with a subtle inclination of his head, his ultimate expression of approbation. The rapport between Daedalus and Talos eventually deteriorated, not in a single dramatic incident, but through a gradual accumulation of minor frictions. As Talos's proficiency burgeoned, Daedalus found himself increasingly scrutinizing his nephew's endeavors, proffering corrections that were progressively superfluous. Their dialogues became more concise, their silences more protracted and less amicable. The most widely known rendition of the myth recounts that Daedalus, overwhelmed by envy, propelled Talos from the Acropolis to his demise. However, perhaps the reality was more subdued, more commonplace. Perhaps there was simply a profound disagreement. harsh words exchanged within the confined environs of the workshop, culminating in Talos departing to establish his own enterprise as a rival. The demise might have been a metaphorical one, signifying the dissolution of a relationship rather than the cessation of a life. Following his nephew's departure, Daedalus's workshop became even more hushed. He would engage in self-dialogue as he labored, a continuous stream of technical observations and mnemonic aids. This juncture necessitates greater tightness. Recall to permit this to desiccate before applying the subsequent layer. The proportionality is not entirely accurate here. Visitors might discern his presence before visually locating him, his voice a soft murmur barely distinguishable from the rhythmic sounds of his tools against wood or stone. When King Minos of Crete solicited his professional expertise, Daedalus did not embark upon his voyage with pomp and circumstance. He meticulously packed his tools in oiled fabric to forestall corrosion, bade quiet farewells to neighbors who had scarcely known him despite years of close proximity, and boarded a merchant vessel destined for Crete with the resignation of an individual undertaking yet another professional engagement. The maritime journey itself unfolded without incident. Daedalus spent the majority of it seated upon the deck, observing the mutable hues of the ocean or below, attempting to procure sleep despite the perpetual motion of the ship. He may have sculpted miniature wooden effigies to occupy his time, not grand masterpieces, but rudimentary forms to keep his hands engaged and his intellect placid. Upon his arrival in Crete, he discovered King Minos to be an exacting patron, the archetype who possesses limited knowledge regarding craftsmanship, yet harbors very specific preconceptions about his desired outcomes. The commission for the labyrinth materialized after Daedalus had already brought to fruition several lesser undertakings for the palatial complex. Ingenious mechanical playthings for the monarch's offspring, enhancements to the palace's sophisticated water system, and ornamental elements for ceremonial chambers. The labyrinth itself, that architectural marvel of antiquity, was not constructed in a sudden surge of creative brilliance, but through months of meticulous strategizing. Daedalus would dedicate entire days to performing calculations on waxed tablets, erasing and re-executing them when the numerical results proved incongruous. He generated countless preliminary sketches and diminutive models, evaluating disparate configurations of pathways and cul-de-sacs. The actual construction spanned years, with Daedalus overseeing teams of laborers who meticulously positioned stone upon stone in strict adherence to his blueprints. He was not an autocratic overseer, but a fatigued superintendent who frequently had to elucidate the identical concept multiple times, who occasionally had to rectify work that had been improperly executed, and who concluded each day encrusted with stone dust and too utterly enervated to do more than perform a cursory ablution before succumbing to a dreamless slumber. During this epoch, Daedalus's progeny, Icarus, was transitioning from childhood into young adulthood. Their relationship was not characterized by incessant pedagogical moments or profound philosophical dialogues. Most days, they simply coexisted within the same environments. Daedalus, too, deeply engrossed in his labors to impart much in the way of paternal sagacity. Icarus amusing himself by observing the workmen or engaging with the mechanical contrivances his father had fashioned for the royal children. As you repose and attend to this narrative, visualize the labyrinth gradually materializing, not in an instantaneous burst, but stone by patient stone, Imagine the quiet contentment Daedalus might have experienced, not upon its ultimate completion, but during those infrequent instances when a particularly formidable section coalesced precisely as he had envisioned it. These modest triumphs, rather than grandiose accomplishments, constituted the authentic recompense of his vocation. When the labyrinth was finally brought to fruition, there was no ceremonial event, no official inauguration. Minos merely arrived to inspect it, signified his approval with a nod, and commenced formulating plans for its utilization. Plans that would eventually precipitate Daedalus's incarceration when he aided Theseus in navigating the intricate maze to vanquish the Minotaur. The celebrated escape utilizing wax wings transpired after years of silent confinement, during which Daedalus reverted to the unembellished work of his hands, carving, constructing, creating small, aesthetically pleasing objects, not because they would procure his liberation, but because the act of creation was his inherent métier. The wings themselves were meticulously fabricated over many weeks. Feathers were collected one or two at a time so as not to provoke suspicion, and wax was liquefied in small quantities over flickering candles during the nocturnal hours. All batches over candles at night. When contemplating the legendary figure of Daedalus, a profound sense of reassurance emerges from envisioning him as an exhausted artisan rather than an extraordinary innovator or a grieving parent. His compelling narrative serves as a potent reminder that the vast majority of human accomplishments, even those so remarkable they transcend into myth, are forged through diligent, often laborious effort, rather than sudden, dramatic flashes of brilliance. The very texture of his hands, hardened and discolored by countless decades of ceaseless toil, imparts a more profound understanding of human ingenuity than any fantastical tale ever could. It is the unyielding patience with which he confronted challenges, his systematic approach to his craft, and the gradual accumulation of expertise over a lifetime that truly constitute the bedrock of creation. A truth as resonant in the bustling streets of ancient Athens as it remains in our contemporary world. As one's thoughts gently meander through this tranquil recounting, perhaps a connection is drawn to the dedicated craftspeople encountered in one's own existence, or to the quiet, persistent endeavors that underpin so much of what humanity cherishes. In the ensuing narrative, our exploration will delve into another frequently overlooked facet of ancient Greek society: the transformative impact of a humble arboreal entity that irrevocably altered the destiny of an entire polis, not through any miraculous intervention, but through its consistent, gradual provision of sustenance, vital oils, and welcome shade. Let us therefore persist in our unhurried odyssey through the rich tapestry of Greek mythology by directing our attention to an object that might initially appear unremarkable: a tree. Yet, this is no ordinary tree. It is the venerable olive tree, whose unobtrusive presence molded the very fabric of Athens in ways far more profound than the tumultuous conflicts or intricate political machinations that so frequently dominate historical accounts. The celebrated myth is likely familiar. In Athens' nascent era, the Olympian deities Athena and Poseidon vied for the city's patronage. Poseidon, with a forceful strike of his formidable trident, brought forth a saline spring upon the sacred Acropolis. Athena, in contrast, with a delicate touch upon the earth, caused the inaugural olive tree to spring forth from that very spot. The citizenry, recognizing the superior utility of Athena's offering, selected her gift, and the city subsequently adopted her illustrious name. However, what the myth often omits, a detail for which myths, by their very nature, rarely allocate space, is the protracted, gentle manner in which this remarkable tree incrementally revolutionized the city's fortunes over many centuries. Not through divine intervention, but through the steadfast provision of its invaluable bounty, its delectable fruit, its versatile oil, its durable wood, and its comforting shade. Envision a serene early summer dawn in ancient Athens, long before the majestic Parthenon graced the summit of the Acropolis. The nascent sun has just commenced its ascent, casting a gentle warmth upon the eastern slopes of the surrounding hills. A farmer, his gait unhurried, traverses his olive groves, some of the trees having been planted by his grandfather, others predating even that venerable lineage. These are not the imposing, dramatic specimens like the colossal oak or the stately cypress. Instead, they stand at a modest stature, their robust trunks frequently gnarled and contorted by the passage of time, their leaves a delicate silver green that shimmers and shifts with every soft zephyr. The farmer progresses deliberately, scrutinizing each tree with the meticulous attention of an individual whose very livelihood hinges upon discerning subtle alterations. He observes which trees are laden with fruit this particular year, and which appear to be experiencing a period of dormancy. He vigilantly checks for any indications of disease or damage sustained during the harsh winter storms. There is no urgency to this inspection. Olive trees, after all, operate on a vastly different temporal scale than human beings, with some enduring for hundreds, even thousands of years. Nearby, his wife and daughter are diligently gathering fallen branches to fuel their cooking fire. Olive wood combusts slowly, emitting minimal smoke and a most agreeable aroma. It represents one of the myriad modest blessings bestowed by the tree, frequently overlooked in more grandiose narratives. As they work, their voices intermingle in hushed conversation about mundane affairs. A neighbor's recent childbirth, preparations for the impending festival, a bread recipe requiring further refinement. Their gentle murmurs merge harmoniously with the soft rustling of leaves and the distant calls of various avian species. Within the city proper, the pervasive influence of the olive is equally widespread, yet similarly unobtrusive. In a humble dwelling situated near the bustling agora, a woman awakens before her family to commence the day's preparations. She ignites a diminutive clay lamp, fueled by precious olive oil. The flame, though tiny, casts just sufficient illumination for her to navigate the room without disturbing the slumbering household. This deceptively simple ritual, transforming darkness into light, is enacted in countless Athenian homes each morning and evening, an everyday marvel rendered possible by the unassuming olive. Later, she will judiciously employ olive oil for culinary purposes, for the soothing treatment of minor abrasions, and for moisturizing skin parched by the relentless sun and wind. She will meticulously cleanse the family's woolen garments by treating stubborn stains with a concoction of olive oil blended with fuller's earth. These are not the actions that find their way into epic poetry or onto exquisitely painted pottery, yet they form the tranquil backdrop against which every other facet of Athenian existence gracefully unfolds. In a workshop situated near the city's periphery, an elderly potter meticulously prepares to glaze his most recent creations. The clay vessels and amphorae, specifically designed for the secure storage of olive oil, stand in neat, expectant rows. He understands implicitly that these containers will journey far beyond the confines of Athens, bearing not merely oil, but the esteemed reputation of his city to distant maritime ports. Egyptian merchants hold Attic oil in high regard for its unparalleled quality. Traders from the Black Sea eagerly exchange their grain for the coveted golden liquid. Without the necessity of dramatic pronouncements or aggressive military campaigns, the unassuming olive establishes Athens as a vital hub within a vast, interconnected network of commerce. The potter labors with methodical precision. His movements, though slowed by the inevitable advance of age, remain remarkably accurate, honed by decades of dedicated practice. As he meticulously applies the glaze, he softly hums a melody imparted to him by his grandfather, a working song celebrating the olive harvest, a tune far older than anyone can recall. The song lacks dramatic crescendos or intricate harmonies. It possesses only a gentle, repetitive melody that perfectly synchronizes with the rhythmic motions of hands plucking fruit or feet pressing oil. Elsewhere in the bustling city, within a physician's residence, a man endures a persistent and irritating cough. The physician, not a mythological miracle worker, but a pragmatic healer possessing knowledge meticulously transmitted through generations, carefully prepares a remedial concoction of olive oil infused with various therapeutic herbs. He elucidates to his patient that the oil will effectively soothe the irritation in the throat and serve as a potent carrier for the healing properties inherent in the herbs. This invaluable knowledge is neither dramatic nor magical. It represents the quiet, incremental accumulation of observations diligently recorded by innumerable healers over many centuries. As midday approaches and the sun's intensity steadily increases, people instinctively seek respite in the welcome shade provided by olive trees strategically planted throughout the city. Unlike the meticulously cultivated gardens of later historical periods, these trees fulfill eminently practical functions, offering shade, yielding fruit, and serving as natural boundary markers between properties. Beneath the protective canopy of one such tree, two venerable gentlemen are seated upon a simple stone bench, engrossed in a game of pente played on a board scratched directly into the earth. They have convened at this very spot for numerous years, their enduring friendship sustained through countless games contested in the dappled light filtering through the olive leaves. Their conversation, unhurried and discursive, meanders like a tranquil stream, touching upon topical matters such as the prevailing weather, various aches and pains, and the most recent decisions emanating from the assembly. They frequently pause, either to contemplate their next strategic move, or simply to savor the comfortable silence that exists between individuals who no longer require a constant stream of words to communicate effectively. Around them, the city continues its ceaseless rhythm, merchants vociferously hawking their wares, children engaged in boisterous play, and craftspeople diligently pursuing their vocations. Yet here beneath the benevolent olive shade, time itself appears to decelerate. The profound economic significance of the olive to Athens becomes unequivocally apparent when one considers the renowned Panathenaic Games, an illustrious quadrennial festival organized to honor the revered goddess Athena. The coveted prizes awarded to the victorious athletes consisted of amphorae brimming with exquisite olive oil. Not merely any oil, but oil meticulously extracted from the sacred trees believed to be direct descendants of Athena's original divine gift. These extraordinarily special trees flourished in meticulously maintained groves situated outside the city, diligently cared for by dedicated officials specifically appointed for this crucial purpose. Imagine the quiet, unwavering commitment of these diligent caretakers, whose invaluable work rarely garnered public attention unless an unforeseen issue arose. Day after day, season after season, they meticulously pruned, assiduously watered during periods of drought, and vigilantly checked for parasitic infestations, all to guarantee the continued health and vitality of the sacred trees. Their relationship with these venerable trees was profoundly intimate, yet devoid of any romanticized notions. They possessed an intricate understanding of each tree's unique requirements, meticulously noted its individual quirks and inherent tendencies, celebrated its bountiful years, and tenderly nursed it through leaner periods. The oil derived from these hallowed trees possessed not only immense symbolic value, but also represented substantial material wealth. A triumphant athlete might receive an amphora containing oil whose market value was equivalent to several years' wages for an average laborer. This coveted prize was neither ostentatious nor dramatic, no gleaming golden laurel wreaths or resplendent armor, yet its practical utility was immeasurable. Winners possessed the option to sell the valuable oil, utilize it for their own household consumption, or trade it for other desired commodities. The far-reaching influence of the olive extended beyond mere economics, permeating the very fabric of Athenian law and social stratification. The punitive measures for damaging an olive tree, particularly a sacred specimen, were exceptionally severe, potentially even culminating in capital punishment during the earliest historical periods. This harshness was not indicative of an unusually cruel Athenian populace, but rather a profound recognition of the critical importance these slow-growing trees held for their collective well-being. Athenian citizenship itself was occasionally articulated through the evocative metaphor of the olive. Just as an olive tree, though transplanted, would invariably retain its fundamental nature, so too would an Athenian remain an Athenian, even when residing in foreign lands. And just as the olive tree required many years to mature and yield its precious fruit, so too did the comprehensive development of a responsible citizen necessitate patience and meticulous nurturing. The cultivation of olive trees demands enduring patience and meticulous, diligent tending. Perhaps the most profound and pervasive influence the olive exerted upon Athens manifested through its simple yet powerful gift of consistent bounty. Unlike the precarious grain harvests, which were susceptible to complete devastation during periods of drought, olive trees reliably yielded their fruit, even if the abundance varied from year to year. This inherent dependability forged a crucial safeguard against widespread hunger, thereby nurturing a societal environment stable enough to foster deep philosophical inquiry, the flourishing of dramatic arts, and the sophisticated development of democratic governance. One might ponder the vastly altered trajectory Athens could have taken without this unobtrusive, ever-present staple. Lacking olive oil to fuel their lamps, the vigorous intellectual pursuits of the city would have been severely confined to the daylight hours, curtailing nocturnal study and debate. Without the lucrative trade generated by olive exports, the substantial wealth necessary to erect impressive public edifices and finance grand festivals might never have materialized. Furthermore, Without the tranquil, verdant canopy of olive groves, the characteristic outdoor dialogues that defined Athenian philosophical discourse, with thinkers engaging in spirited debate under dappled light, would undoubtedly have adopted a distinctly different form. As the imagined day gracefully transitions into evening, families throughout the city gather around their tables for the main repast. Small, polished bowls of olive oil shimmer enticingly, poised for the dipping of freshly baked bread. The oil, sourced from diverse groves, possesses subtly distinct flavor profiles, some offering a piquant, peppery zest, others a remarkably smooth and mellow taste, and still others hinting at a fresh grassiness. These nuanced distinctions, deeply cherished by Athenians in their daily lives, are, remarkably, seldom acknowledged within the sweeping narratives of history. Following the communal meal, as the encroaching darkness fully envelops the city, those very same oil lamps that heralded the day's dawn are rekindled. In their soft, inviting glow, parents recount cherished stories to their children. Skilled craftspeople meticulously continue their intricate work, and diligent scribes painstakingly record commercial transactions or faithfully transcribe weighty philosophical texts. The iconic dramas we revere from ancient Athens, the masterful plays penned by Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, were not only conceived, but also frequently read aloud and studied under the modest, flickering radiance of these ubiquitous lamps. Thus, the day concludes precisely as it commenced, with the olive's unassuming yet indispensable offerings quietly enabling the vibrant tapestry of urban life. There are no dramatic thunderbolts or fearsome sea monsters, no epic heroic quests or devastating tragic downfalls. Merely the steadfast, unwavering presence of a tree that generously bestows its fruit, its oil, its timber, and its shade, demanding remarkably little in return. As one prepares to rest and perhaps gently succumb to sleep, it is worth reflecting on the profound frequency with which history's most celebrated achievements are built upon such seemingly humble foundations. The pivotal, dramatic junctures we vividly recall, the thunderous battles, the stirring political orations, the breathtaking artistic masterpieces, were all made possible by an innumerable array of quiet, unassuming acts of cultivation and dedicated care, faithfully reiterated day after day, across countless generations. In our forthcoming narrative, we shall delve into another frequently overlooked facet of ancient Greek existence: the remarkable women of Delphi. Their sagacious, softly spoken counsel profoundly influenced the weighty decisions of both formidable kings and ordinary citizens, not through any mystical or supernatural powers, but rather through their astute observation and profound comprehension of human nature. The serene olive groves we have just metaphorically traversed now give way to an entirely different topography, a demanding mountain path that winds relentlessly upward towards Delphi, the revered sanctuary of Apollo, and the hallowed abode of the most celebrated oracle in the ancient world. Yet this evening, our focus will not rest upon the dramatic prophecies themselves or the magnificent temple with its resplendent statue of Apollo. Instead, our attention will shift to the women whose quiet, diligent efforts rendered the oracle's function possible, encompassing not only the Pythia herself, but also the myriad other women whose contributions history has regrettably consigned to oblivion. Picture a crisp, invigorating spring morning unfolding at Delphi. The sun has not yet ascended above the majestic peaks of Mount Parnassus, and the entire sacred precinct remains bathed in the ethereal hues of deep blue shadow. Most of the visitors, having journeyed from afar, are still peacefully slumbering within the comfortable guest houses nestled in the town below. However, the women who serve the temple have been awake for many hours, their day having begun long before dawn. They move with quiet reverence through the hallowed grounds, preparing for the day's duties with the unhurried, practiced efficiency characteristic of those who have performed these identical tasks countless times over the years. Among these dedicated women is Cleopia, an elder figure who has resided at Delphi for over 3 decades. She initially commenced her service as a youthful attendant, and now holds the distinguished position of overseeing all domestic aspects of the sanctuary. While she is not the Pythia, the renowned priestess who articulates Apollo's divine oracles, her role is undeniably equally essential. This morning, just like every preceding morning, she meticulously verifies that fresh, pristine water has been transported from the sacred Castalian spring for the myriad purification rituals, that the temple floors have been impeccably swept and tidied, and that the eternal flame within Apollo's innermost sanctuary continues to burn with an unwavering, steady luminescence. Cleopia's hands, bearing the indelible marks of decades of tireless work, tell a story not of the dramatic exploits of legendary heroes, but of the ceaseless, repetitive tasks that painstakingly uphold the sanctity of these sacred spaces. Her fingers, slightly gnarled and bent with the initial onset of arthritis, delicately adjust the intricate folds of a ceremonial cloth, gently smooth a minor wrinkle from an altar covering, or precisely pinch the wick of an oil lamp to ensure it burns with optimal brightness. Each movement is performed with deliberate grace, imbued with a quiet, focused attention that in itself constitutes a profound form of devotion and worship. Nearby, a younger woman named Theodora diligently grinds barley, preparing the finely milled flour for the sacrificial cakes destined to be offered to Apollo. The small hand mill emits a soft, rhythmic cadence, the gentle rasp of stone against stone, as the raw grain gradually undergoes its transformation into powdery flour. She executes this process without any trace of haste or urgency. The intrinsic quality of the offering holds paramount importance, and any undue speed would be perceived as disrespectful, both to the precious grain itself and to the revered deity who will ultimately receive it. As she labors, she hums a soft, melodic tune, not a formal, ritualistic hymn, but a simple working song, a comforting melody passed down to her years ago by the woman who first instructed her in this ancient task. These women, despite their cloistered existence within the sanctuary, are far from isolated from the wider world. They possess an uncanny ability to hear and absorb everything. The intimate confidences whispered by anxious visitors seeking divine guidance, the weighty political discussions unfolding among delegates dispatched from various city-states, and the latest news exchanged by merchants arriving from distant, bustling ports. They assimilate this wealth of information, not with the calculated, strategic focus of spies, but with the innate, natural awareness of individuals whose very work renders them simultaneously visible to the casual observer, and yet, paradoxically, often completely overlooked in their significance. When powerful kings and esteemed generals arrive to consult the hallowed oracle, their gaze typically falls upon the prominent priestess, the stately male priests, and the awe-inspiring architecture of the temple. They rarely, if ever, notice the humble woman who poured their purification water, or meticulously swept the very path upon which they majestically strode. Yet, these same unnoticed women frequently possess the clearest and most comprehensive understanding of what truly transpires at Delphi. An understanding painstakingly accumulated through countless years of quiet, unobtrusive observation. By the mid-morning, a steady stream of visitors begins to arrive at the sanctuary. Today, among them, is a distinguished delegation from Corinth, comprising affluent merchants who are seeking divine counsel regarding a proposed new and potentially lucrative trade route. They present an array of impressive offerings: a gleaming bronze tripod, several elegant amphorae filled with exquisite olive oil, and a small, securely fastened chest that by all indications likely contains a substantial quantity of gold. They are formally greeted by the official representatives of the temple, dignified men clad in ceremonial robes, who accept these precious gifts with appropriate solemnity and reverence. Standing discreetly behind these officiating men are several temple attendants, including a woman named Philomena, who has faithfully served at Delphi for nearly 2 decades. Her official designated role is modest in scope. She assists in the intricate preparations of the Pythia for her trance state and helps to meticulously maintain the temple's inventories. However, her profound understanding of the intricate mechanisms by which the oracle truly functions extends far deeper than most people could ever possibly fathom. Philomena, with her keen observational faculties, discerns every subtle detail about the Corinthian delegation. The impeccable quality of their garments, the hushed manner in which they converse amongst themselves when they believe no one is privy to their words, and the subtle, underlying tensions that betray potential disagreements regarding the very commercial venture they have journeyed to inquire about. She requires no divine inspiration or mystical insight to interpret these revealing signs. Merely decades of patiently observing similar groups arrive and depart, their subsequent fortunes and misfortunes later reported by returning visitors. As the day steadily progresses, Philomena and the other dedicated women continue their essential work throughout the sanctuary. They meticulously replace the oil in the numerous lamps, carefully arrange offerings upon the smaller altars, and assiduously prepare meals for the priests and priestesses. Their movements are synchronized with the natural rhythm of the sun's trajectory across the sky, unhurried, yet executed with precise timing. The oracle, it must be remembered, operates only on specific, designated days of the month, and consequently, every single detail must be in perfect readiness when those momentous days finally arrive. The current Pythia bears the name Aristone, a woman who originated from a respectable family and arrived at Delphi in her 30s after experiencing the profound loss of widowhood. Now, in her 50th year, she has faithfully served as Apollo's sacred voice for nearly 15 years. The popular, often romanticized image of the Pythia frequently portrays a young woman driven into a state of wild, ecstatic frenzy. But the historical reality was, more often than not, quite different. The majority of Pythias were mature women, specifically chosen for their inherent dignity, their unwavering composure, and their exemplary moral character. On non-oracle days, such as this particular one, Aristone actively participates in the daily rhythms of sanctuary life. This afternoon finds her comfortably seated in a small, tranquil garden, surrounded by several of the temple attendants, including younger women who are diligently absorbing the complex and time-honored traditions of Delphi. They are engaged in the timeless activity of spinning wool, a common domestic task, performed by women across all strata of Greek society, from queens to slaves. As they work, Aristone shares her extensive knowledge of the sanctuary's rich history. Her voice is low, measured, and imbued with wisdom as she recounts the evolutionary paths of certain rituals, explains the precise handling of particular offerings, and elucidates how to recognize subtle signs that might indicate Apollo's displeasure. This is not a form of dramatic, mystical training, but rather practical, grounded instruction delivered with the unwavering patience of someone who profoundly understands that the preservation of tradition necessitates meticulous attention to a myriad of seemingly small, inconsequential details. Among her attentive listeners is a girl of perhaps 14 years named Timandra, who came to Delphi as an orphan and has since been raised entirely within the devoted service of the sanctuary. She listens with exceptional intensity, occasionally posing insightful questions that betray an unusually sharp and perceptive mind. The older women exchange knowing glances, a silent acknowledgement of their shared observation. They have been quietly watching Timandra for some time, noting her meticulous attention to ritualistic detail and her intuitive comprehension of visitors' unspoken needs. She might, they muse, possess the intrinsic temperament and profound spiritual aptitude required to someday serve the god directly as his voice. As dusk began to settle, the sacred precinct of Delphi underwent a subtle yet profound transformation. The throngs of daily visitors, having concluded their pilgrimages and sought their counsel, commenced their descent back to the bustling town nestled in the valley below. This exodus left behind a more serene and contemplative atmosphere, allowing the dedicated women and men who resided within the sanctuary to attend to their personal affairs and the ongoing maintenance of the hallowed grounds. Within a modest edifice situated conveniently close to the temple's bustling kitchen, several of the more seasoned attendants convened. They partook of a simple, nourishing repast, while engaging in a purposeful exchange of their day's observations. Far from being idle chatter or trivial gossip, their discourse constituted a meticulous and insightful sharing of intelligence, designed to enhance their collective service to the sanctuary. Their deliberations encompassed a keen assessment of which supplicants demonstrated genuine piety and reverence, and which merely performed the ritualistic motions. They discussed which votive offerings might require particular care or preservation, and critically, which emergent political tensions or diplomatic undercurrents could potentially influence the pronouncements of the oracle in forthcoming consultations. Cleopia, a venerable attendant known for her sharp perception, interjected with an observation regarding the leader of the Corinthian delegation. She noted his palpable unease, evidenced by his continuous fidgeting with his attire and a tendency to speak with an uncharacteristically loud volume. He posed numerous inquiries concerning previous prophecies related to mercantile endeavors, she recounted, deftly breaking a piece of bread from the communal loaf. I presented him with the requested inscribed records, yet he appeared distinctly disheartened by their inherent ambiguity and lack of definitive statements. Philomena, another experienced attendant, affirmed Cleopia's assessment with a knowing nod. I overheard him engaged in a rather heated discussion with the youngest member of their entourage. It seems they have already committed a substantial allocation of resources to this particular venture. Their true objective, therefore, is not so much to solicit genuine divine guidance, but rather to secure a celestial endorsement for a decision that has, in essence, already been irrevocably made. This crucial insight, gleaned from careful observation, would be discreetly conveyed to Aristone, the Pythia, before the advent of the next oracle day. Its purpose was not to dictate her pronouncements, but rather to furnish her with invaluable context, potentially enabling her to discern the true, unspoken question concealed beneath the formal inquiry. The Pythia's renowned ambiguous prophecies were never haphazard or arbitrary. Instead, they were the profound manifestations of a deep-seated comprehension of human psychology and the intricate, often veiled motivations that propelled individuals to seek divine counsel. As the last vestiges of daylight receded and absolute darkness enveloped the sanctuary, the flickering glow of oil lamps began to illuminate the sacred spaces. In the quiet solitude of her private chamber, Aristone sat, meticulously perusing ancient written records of past oracular responses, particularly those pertaining to trade and maritime expeditions. This practice was not undertaken with the conscious intent of directly utilizing this accumulated knowledge when she eventually ascended the tripod above the mysterious, vapor-emitting chasm, for she genuinely experienced an altered, transcendent state, which she attributed solely to the indwelling presence of Apollo. Rather, her diligent intellectual preparation was a profound act of deference and respect, offered both to the revered god and to the earnest seekers who journeyed great distances to solicit his wisdom. Concurrently, within the unassuming confines of a simple dormitory, the younger attendants prepared for the restorative embrace of sleep. Timandra, a diligent young woman, sat upon her humble pallet, carefully mending a small tear in her woolen himation, her work illuminated by the gentle glow of a modest oil lamp. Around her, other girls and women engaged in their own quiet evening rituals, meticulously combing their long hair, sharing hushed, comforting conversations, and offering simple, heartfelt prayers to various deities for peaceful slumber or the alleviation of minor physical discomforts. These were the true women of Delphi, not the enigmatic seers often depicted in later artistic renditions, cloaked in exotic, flowing garments and shrouded in theatrical mystery. They were, in reality, ordinary human beings, dedicated to the intricate and demanding labor of maintaining a vital sanctuary and serving as the crucial intermediaries between the mortal and divine realms. Their inherent power stemmed not primarily from dramatic divine possession, but rather from their unique and strategic position at the confluence of critical information, ancient traditions, and a profound understanding of human psychology. They possessed the rare discernment to comprehend what visitors truly needed to hear, which was not invariably what those visitors desired to hear. Moreover, they recognized with profound clarity that the intrinsic value of the oracular experience sometimes lay not in the specific content of a prophecy, but in the very act of embarking upon the journey of seeking guidance, the profound process of articulating one's deepest fears and most fervent hopes within a sacred space, deliberately set apart from the clamor and distractions of everyday existence. As one pauses to reflect upon this gentle narrative, one might find oneself drawn to contemplate the enduring wisdom embodied by these often overlooked women, their unwavering and patient attention to the minutest details, their profound and empathetic understanding of the intricacies of human nature, and their insightful recognition that genuine clarity and insight frequently emerge not from sudden, dramatic revelations, but from diligent observation and the thoughtful interpretation of subtle patterns, visible only to those who dedicate the time and effort to truly perceive. In the subsequent chapter of our exploration, our focus will shift to another frequently neglected group, the dedicated servants whose tireless efforts maintained the daily rhythms of life on Mount Olympus. Their existence serves as a compelling testament to the fact that even the most powerful deities were not self-sufficient, and that the greatest divine authorities still relied profoundly on the quiet, yet absolutely essential, labor required to ensure the smooth operation of a celestial household. As our gentle journey continues through the often unseen corners of Greek mythology, let us now direct our thoughts towards the majestic Mount Olympus. Our attention will not be drawn to the dramatic, grand throne room where the Olympian gods convened to make world-altering decisions, but rather to the hushed hallways, the bustling kitchens, and the verdant gardens where countless immortal servants diligently maintained the divine residence. For even within the realm of mythology, true greatness invariably necessitates unwavering support, and immense power inherently demands meticulous, ongoing maintenance. One might envision the ethereal early morning light, gently caressing the eastern slopes of Olympus, while the principal gods might still be ensconced in slumber within their magnificent, opulent chambers. The sacred mountain is already pulsating with a quiet, purposeful activity. Immortal servants, graceful nymphs, lesser deities, and various beings who exist in the fascinating interstitial spaces between the divine and mortal realms move with practiced ease through halls of gleaming marble and polished gold, preparing for the commencement of another eternal day. Among this diligent retinue is Aglaia, a youthful nymph whose primary and significant responsibility involves attending to the personal quarters of Zeus, the sovereign of the gods. She executes her duties with the meticulous precision characteristic of one who has acquired an intimate understanding of exactly how the king of Olympus prefers his personal surroundings. The colossal bed, adorned with sheets exquisitely woven from ethereal clouds, must be arranged with a specific artistry, not excessively tidy, as Zeus, it is known, appreciates a certain comfortable dishevelment, yet certainly not genuinely messy. Her hands move with practiced grace, smoothing imperceptible wrinkles from plump pillows, adjusting the heavy curtains to admit precisely the desired amount of ambient light, and carefully dusting the vast collection of gifts and tributes that Zeus has amassed over countless centuries. Each individual item holds a unique narrative, a story that Aglaia knows intimately by heart. Although Zeus himself may have long since forgotten the precise origins of many of these artifacts, she treats even the smallest object with a profound sense of reverence, not born of fear, but from a deep understanding that immortality inherently entails an endless accumulation of meaningful and storied possessions. Elsewhere on the sprawling mountain, within the immense kitchens, vast enough to orchestrate magnificent feasts for the entire pantheon of gods, an ancient and venerable deity named Euphrosyne presides over the intricate preparation of ambrosia and nectar. While frequently described merely as the sustenance of the gods, ambrosia is, in truth, not a singular dish, but a complex and diverse cuisine, featuring countless variations meticulously crafted to suit the distinct palates of different divine beings. Euphrosyne herself has been crafting these sublime divine meals since an era preceding the birth of many of the current Olympians. Her movements are unhurried, yet flawlessly efficient, each gesture refined and perfected by millennia of continuous practice. Under her sagacious direction, dozens of lesser immortals diligently perform a myriad of tasks, meticulously gathering rare and exquisite ingredients from every corner of the world, painstakingly preparing various culinary elements that may require decades of aging before their ultimate incorporation, and assiduously managing the eternal flames that, under no circumstances, must ever be permitted to extinguish. The vast kitchen operates in a state of comfortable, almost reverent silence, punctuated only by occasional soft instructions or murmured questions, which gently punctuate the quiet, rhythmic cadence of their collective labor. These immortals have been executing the same tasks together for countless centuries. Consequently, they anticipate one another's needs with the effortless grace and synchronization of dancers who have long since committed their intricate choreography to memory. Euphrosyne, with a discerning palate honed over eons, tastes a sauce that has been meticulously reducing for the equivalent of several human lifetimes. She considers its nuanced flavors thoughtfully, then, with a delicate touch, adds a solitary drop of potent nectar from a tiny vial suspended at her waist. The subtlety of this infinitesimal adjustment would be utterly imperceptible to mortal senses, yet it is precisely this minute refinement that delineates the boundary between mere excellence and absolute divine perfection. Beyond the majestic palace proper, nestled within the renowned and sprawling gardens of Olympus, a satyr named Philoxenus meticulously tends to a collection of botanical wonders that exist nowhere else in the entirety of creation. Some of these extraordinary plants unfurl blooms whose colors subtly shift and change in response to the emotions of those who gaze upon them. Others yield fruits that possess the remarkable ability to bestow specific, pleasant dreams upon anyone who places them beneath their pillow before slumber. A select few, carefully sequestered within a special enclosure protected by crystalline walls, are both dangerously potent and exquisitely beautiful, proving essential for certain divine remedies or profound transformations. Philoxenus, contrary to the typical wild and boisterous nature commonly associated with his kind, exhibits none of these characteristics. Centuries of devoted care for divine flora have transformed him into a methodical, exceptionally patient, and keenly attentive guardian. Hyper-aware of even the most minute alterations in soil composition and ambient light, he converses softly with the plants as he works, not from any actual belief that they comprehend his spoken words, but because after such an immeasurable duration in their silent company, prolonged quietude feels, to him, somehow impolite. His assistant for the day is a young water nymph named Clio, who has only recently been assigned to the gardens after serving several decades in the bath chambers. She observes with rapt attention as Philoxenus meticulously demonstrates the precise technique for pruning a particularly temperamental vine, the grapes of which are exclusively reserved for wines served at divine weddings. The critical cut, he explains, must be executed with absolute precision at the exact moment when the vine's internal light pulses with a distinct blue-green hue, a timing that demands both unwavering focus and immense patience. There is no need for haste, Philoxenus assures her, his voice as gentle and soothing as the soft breeze that whispers through the garden. This vine has been growing for 700 years. It can certainly afford to wait another few minutes for the perfect moment to be pruned. As the midday hour gradually approached, the overall tempo of activity throughout Olympus visibly accelerated. The principal gods would soon awaken from their repose, each with their idiosyncratic habits and specific requirements. Within the hallowed chambers of Athena, a small assembly of owls, which were not ordinary avian creatures, but rather minor immortals who had chosen to assume this particular form. Meticulously arranged scrolls and writing implements, according to the goddess's famously precise and intricate organizational system. They performed their duties with the scrupulous attention of dedicated librarians, ensuring that each sacred text and every writing tool was positioned exactly where Athena would anticipate finding it when she commenced her intellectual pursuits for the day. She begins her day's reading. In Aphrodite's opulent suite, a dedicated contingent of graces busies itself with preparations for the goddess's imminent awakening. With meticulous care, they arrange her array of cosmetics and exquisite jewelry, gently warm, fragrant oils destined for her luxurious bath, and thoughtfully select various attire options. Their choices are guided by an intimate understanding of her current inclinations and the specific activities she has planned for the day. Their demanding work transcends mere attention to physical objects. It necessitates a keen awareness of emotional currents, discerning which hues might best complement Aphrodite's present mood and which subtle fragrances would enhance, rather than overshadow, her inherent divine aroma. Even Ares, the formidable deity of warfare, relies profoundly on the unassuming dedication of his retinue of servants. Within his expansive armory, two fraternal immortals, born from the sacred union of a lesser river god and a graceful mountain nymph, assiduously polish his vast collection of weaponry and protective armor. They labor in a harmonious silence, their experienced hands intuitively knowing the precise method for treating each distinct material. The lustrous bronze, the unyielding iron, the pliable leather, and other esoteric substances that bear no name in the mortal lexicon. Atos, the elder of the two brothers, has diligently maintained Ares's formidable equipment for such an extended period that he possesses an innate to detect imbalances imperceptible to any other being. He executes minute adjustments to a spear's weight distribution, applies specialized emollients to preserve the leather's suppleness while ensuring its strength, and even tests a sword's formidable edge against his own immortal skin. A touch light enough to avoid injury, yet sufficient to unequivocally confirm its razor sharpness. Throughout the sprawling palace, similar scenes of diligent service continuously unfold. Hermes's swift messengers are observed meticulously sorting through a myriad of reports, originating from every corner of the vast cosmos. Poseidon's devoted attendants are seen preparing his magnificent chariot, paying particular attention to the intricate mechanisms that facilitate its seamless transition between aquatic and terrestrial environments. Demeter's helpful assistants are meticulously gathering samples of every novel plant cultivated by human hands, destined for her discerning inspection and potential divine blessing. By the early hours of the afternoon, the principal gods have already commenced their day's myriad activities. Some choose to remain on Olympus, participating in important councils or pursuing personal endeavors. Others embark on journeys to their respective domains or engage with their interests in the mortal realm. Irrespective of their chosen path, the ceaseless work of upholding divine existence perseveres without any interruption. Within an immense hall, whose lofty ceilings appear to ascend into the very clouds themselves, a gathering of muses, not the celebrated 9 traditionally associated with the arts and sciences, but rather their numerous sisters of lesser fame, diligently practice the intricate musical compositions destined to accompany the evening repast. Their diverse array of instruments includes some familiar to human experience, alongside others that produce ethereal sounds utterly impossible in the mortal sphere. Polythea, their esteemed leader, has been masterfully composing music for divine observances since an era predating human speech. She possesses a profound understanding of the intricate harmonies that delight immortal ears and the subtle melodic variations capable of influencing divine temperaments. Today, she is meticulously crafting a novel arrangement, specifically conceived to alleviate the lingering tensions between Apollo and Artemis, who had experienced a minor disagreement during yesterday's hunt. As the Muses continue their melodious practice, an industrious team of servants meticulously prepares the grand dining hall. Tables and luxurious couches are arranged with precise adherence to the prevailing divine hierarchy and interdeity relationships, a sophisticated layout that undergoes subtle alterations over time as alliances shift and favor waxes and wanes. This precise positioning constitutes a complex diplomatic art in itself, meticulously ensuring that rival deities are not seated in undue proximity, while simultaneously honoring each god's individual status. Eunomia, the immortal charged with this intricate arrangement, has managed divine dining logistics since the epoch when the Titans held sway. He operates from an encyclopedic memory, constantly refined by regular discreet conversations with those who attend the gods most intimately, and who might be privy to recent shifts in divine relationships. Each individual place setting is thoughtfully personalized. Poseidon's drinking vessel is invariably filled with pristine water, sourced from a particular underwater spring. Artemis is provided with cushions generously stuffed with aromatic herbs reminiscent of the forest, and Zeus is strategically positioned to command a view of the entire assembly, while himself retaining a subtly elevated vantage point. As evening gradually descends, the intensity of the preparatory activities visibly escalates. The bustling kitchens begin dispatching the initial courses. Servers assume their designated positions in accordance with meticulously established protocols. Wine bearers assiduously prepare bespoke blends tailored to each divine palate. When the gods finally convene, they step into a space so impeccably prepared that they seldom perceive the immense effort invested, which, ironically, is the ultimate objective. The evening feast unfolds with an illusion of effortless grace that is, in fact, the culmination of the most scrupulous planning and flawless execution. As the gods engage in profound debates concerning cosmic affairs or partake in immortal entertainments, hundreds of devoted servants anticipate every need, deftly resolve minor issues before they can escalate, and diligently maintain the pervasive atmosphere of perfect comfort that divinity has come to inherently expect. And subsequent to the feast, when the gods retreat to their private chambers or depart for their nocturnal pursuits, another shift of tireless immortal workers commences the elaborate process of restoration. The dining hall is meticulously returned to a state of impeccable order. Any damaged items for divine tempers occasionally flare with considerable intensity are promptly repaired or replaced. Preparations for the following day's meals are initiated without delay. Within Zeus's personal chambers, Aglaia returns to meticulously turn down the ethereal cloud sheets and make final, precise adjustments to the room's prevailing ambiance. She carefully places a specific dream-inducing flower, cultivated in Philoxenus's renowned garden, into a delicate vase positioned near the bed, subtly adjusts the eternal flame to cast precisely the desired level of illumination, and ensures that a meticulously compiled summary of the day's most significant mortal prayers is strategically placed on a small table where Zeus will undoubtedly perceive it upon awakening. Her devoted work, much like that of all the servants dwelling on Olympus, exists within the nuanced space between sheer necessity and profound artistry. The gods could, in theory, maintain their own personal spaces and prepare their own sustenance. However, the unparalleled perfection they have grown to anticipate, the utterly seamless experience of divinity itself, is inextricably reliant upon countless minute acts of devoted attention and profound care, meticulously performed by those whose names seldom, if ever, grace the pages of ancient myths. As night's embrace fully envelops the majestic mountain, even a significant number of the immortal servants finally find repose. Some congregate in their own modest quarters, sharing the day's experiences or simply relishing each other's companionship. Others pursue personal interests, perhaps cultivating a private garden of their own, or composing poetry destined never to be heard by mortal ears. A select few, such as Euphrosyne in her kitchen, continue their labors through the quiet hours, diligently preparing elements that demand specific nighttime conditions, or simply luxuriating in the profound tranquility of the slumbering palace. As you now rest and attentively absorb this gentle narrative, perhaps you are prompted to ponder the often overlooked supporters in your own world. Those individuals whose quiet, diligent efforts establish the foundational conditions for others' more conspicuous accomplishments. Or perhaps you simply cherish this poignant reminder that even within the grand tapestry of myth, true greatness rarely flourishes in absolute isolation. So, in our forthcoming narrative, we shall delve into the intriguing reasons why the militaristic city-state of Sparta deliberately chose to remain unwalled, and how this apparent vulnerability paradoxically transformed into a profound source of both security and immense pride for one of ancient Greece's most celebrated powers. Let us now continue our unhurried exploration through the annals of ancient Greece by directing our attention to one of its most renowned city-states, Sparta. While the majority of Greek cities sought protection behind formidable stone walls, Athens famously connected to its port by the iconic Long Walls, Thebes encircled by colossal fortifications, and Mycenae surrounded by structures so impressive they were attributed to the mythical Cyclopes. Sparta conspicuously remained unwalled throughout the greater part of its extensive history. This was not due to any deficiency in resources or a lack of architectural expertise on the part of the Spartans to construct defensive structures. Rather, it represented a deliberate and conscious choice, one that profoundly reflected their distinctive approach to national security and their fundamental understanding of what genuinely constituted strength. As the revered Spartan king Agesilaus II is famously reported to have declared when questioned about the absence of walls, "These are the walls of Sparta," as he gestured proudly towards his citizens clad in their unassuming red cloaks. However, instead of dwelling on the dramatic aspects of Spartan military prowess that predominantly capture the popular imagination, let us instead explore the quieter, more quotidian reality of existence within an unwalled city. The subtle psychological ramifications, the practical adaptations necessitated by such a choice, and the intricate social structures that rendered this unusual decision both feasible and sustainable over time. Imagine a misty morning descending upon the Eurotas Valley. the picturesque geographical setting where Sparta was strategically situated. The nascent sun has not yet succeeded in dissipating the low-lying clouds that frequently form overnight within this river basin. A Spartan woman named Cleomachos rises at an early hour, as she conscientiously does every day, and steps out from her modest dwelling. Unlike women residing in fortified cities who might be compelled to traverse a considerable distance before reaching a city gate to exit into the surrounding countryside, Cleomachos possesses the unique advantage of being able to gaze directly from her doorway across open terrain towards the embracing hills. This immediate and unobstructed connection to the natural landscape fundamentally shapes her perception of home in ways distinctly different from Athenian or Theban women. There exists no clear, definitive boundary where the city unequivocally ends and the countryside abruptly begins, no dramatic transition between urban and rural expanses. Instead, Sparta seamlessly blends into its natural surroundings, with houses becoming progressively more dispersed towards the periphery, eventually yielding to the cultivated fields and verdant olive groves that sustain the population. Cleomachos commences her morning ritual, drawing fresh water from the communal neighborhood well for her household requirements. As she operates the rope and pulley system, she exchanges quiet, respectful greetings with neighbors engaged in similar tasks. Their conversation is pragmatic, singularly focused on the day's immediate necessities, and encompasses small observations concerning the prevailing weather or local occurrences. There is no idle chatter about which foreign merchants might have recently arrived through the city gates, simply because there are no gates, and foreign merchants are, as a general policy, actively discouraged from visiting Sparta anyway. This constitutes one of the less obvious, yet significant consequences of existing as an unwalled city. Sparta rigorously maintained an uncommon degree of cultural isolation when compared to other Greek city-states. Without the inherent natural checkpoint that city gates provide, effectively controlling who enters your community becomes considerably more challenging unless alternative systems are meticulously established to manage access. The Spartans adeptly addressed this challenge through the implementation of stringent regulations pertaining to foreigners and the cultivation of a distinctive social structure where outsiders were immediately and unequivocally discernible. As Cleomachos made her way back to her dwelling, carrying her vessel of water, her path intersected with Kirillos, a Spartan man, diligently engaged in his morning physical regimen within the open areas nestled amongst the residential structures. In stark contrast to the inhabitants of fortified urban centers, who typically confined their athletic pursuits to dedicated gymnasia or specialized training fields, the Spartans seamlessly wove physical conditioning into the very fabric of their daily existence and surrounding milieu. Devoid of distinct demarcations between communal and personal domains, or between the established settlement and the wilderness beyond its confines, the rhythms of everyday life naturally extended across the terrain, a characteristic that would have undoubtedly appeared peculiar and unconventional to other Hellenic peoples. By the time the sun climbed higher, approaching mid-morning, the lingering atmospheric veil had completely dissipated, unveiling the majestic mountain ranges that naturally encircled the fertile expanse of the Eurotas Valley. These formidable geological formations, rather than man-made fortifications, constituted Sparta's primary and most crucial defensive barrier. The very site of the city had been astutely selected, capitalizing on its position amidst a landscape characterized by a limited number of readily traversable mountain passes each capable of being effectively safeguarded by comparatively modest military detachments. Thus, the inherent topographical features of the region conferred a degree of security that other polis were compelled to painstakingly construct through monumental architectural endeavors. Proximate to the heart of the burgeoning community, a contingent of 7-year-old boys commenced their daily instructional regimen within the famed agoge, the renowned Spartan pedagogical framework that systematically separated young males from their family households, integrating them into collective living environments, meticulously structured around rigorous military indoctrination. And seasoned mentor, by the name of Dercidas, observed their rudimentary exercises, his countenance betraying no discernible emotion as the youngsters executed their fundamental drills. Dercidas himself possessed a distinguished service record, having participated in formal military expeditions for Sparta and concurrently contributing to the less frequently acknowledged yet equally vital frontier surveillance apparatus. In the absence of encircling fortifications, Sparta was compelled to depend upon an unceasing state of alertness along its territorial boundaries. Shifting detachments of citizens were regularly deployed to monitor crucial mountain defiles and frequently traversed thoroughfares leading into Laconia, the geographical expanse enveloping Sparta. This particular obligation was not perceived as exceptional or onerous. Rather, it constituted an intrinsic component of the Spartan way of life. It was not uncommon for a citizen to dedicate several weeks annually to service at a remote sentinel post, embracing a Spartan existence, vigilantly scrutinizing approaching travelers from afar and interrogating those who sought passage into Spartan dominion. This sophisticated arrangement effectively forged an ethereal barrier, an invisible wall composed not of inert masonry, but of unwavering human attentiveness. As the sun ascended towards its zenith, signaling the approach of midday, Cleomachos converged with several other women to meticulously examine a shared vegetable plot, situated in a locale that, within other urban centers, would typically be designated beyond the municipal limits. The women labored with deliberate precision, scrutinizing the verdant foliage for any indications of malady or insect infestation, gathering the produce that had reached ripeness, and deliberating upon the subsequent plantings. Their discourse seamlessly transitioned to recent intelligence concerning Athenian maritime maneuvers, tidings conveyed by a courier on the preceding day. This particular scenario underscored yet another ramification stemming from Sparta's unfortified condition. The dissemination of information transpired distinctly here compared to Poleas, equipped with defined points of ingress. Lacking monumental gates, where intelligence naturally converged with the arrival of travelers, Sparta cultivated a more distributed and dispersed system for gathering insights. A multitude of minor outposts gathered and transmitted data. Citizens undertaking official missions returned with valuable observations. The select number of authorized foreign emissaries were subjected to thorough interrogations. The net effect was that intelligence tended to permeate Spartan society with greater deliberation and uniformity than in cities where it might initially coalesce among those stationed near the principal entrances or maritime facilities. By the juncture at which Cleomachos and her associates engaged in dialogue regarding the Athenian naval activities, the majority of adults across Sparta were already cognizant of this information, having assimilated it via intricate, overlapping communication channels. Subsequent to their work in the garden, Cleomachos proceeded towards the locale where young girls were actively engrossed in their distinct regimen of physical conditioning. in marked divergence from other Greek city-states, where the scholastic and athletic cultivation of females was either severely curtailed or entirely absent. Sparta actively fostered the physical maturation of its girls, mirroring its boys, albeit with distinct pedagogical priorities and organizational frameworks. In the absence of walls that would otherwise delineate a definitive urban periphery, these training zones materialized organically within the interstitial areas separating residential groupings, rather than within formally designated athletic complexes. As she observed her own daughter participating in a grappling exercise, Cleomachos engaged in a brief exchange of insights with a fellow mother. Neither woman evinced any apprehension regarding their daughter's involvement in pursuits that would undoubtedly have provoked outrage and scandal amongst Athenians. The Spartan perspective on societal gender roles, much like their understanding of municipal borders, exhibited less inflexibility than in other regions of Greece. This was not born of an enlightened, progressive ideology, but rather from a pragmatic acknowledgement that robust women were instrumental in birthing resilient offspring and were capable of safeguarding family estates during the prolonged absences of their male counterparts. The conspicuous lack of fortifications indelibly influenced the Spartan collective psyche in nuanced, yet deeply significant manners. The populace cultivated a fundamentally altered perception of security, one predicated upon intrinsic human preparedness rather than reliance on tangible fortifications. The perpetual visual reinforcement that no edifice of stone intervened between them and prospective perils engendered a pervasive community-wide alertness and a profound sense of mutual reliance, qualities that the presence of defensive walls might well have attenuated. This distinctive ethos manifested itself in a myriad of quotidian customs and practices that would have appeared utterly unconventional to the inhabitants of walled urban centers. The Spartans seldom amassed ostentatious riches or opulent personal effects, a practice stemming partly from their renowned commitment to austere living, but also significantly because overt displays of affluence within an unprotected city would invariably constitute both an enticement for external marauders and a considerably greater challenge to safeguard. Consequently, they evolved architectural paradigms that prioritized utilitarianism above elaborate embellishment, crafting domiciles intended as self-contained, defensible units rather than depending upon a collective, city-encompassing protective infrastructure. As the afternoon hours gradually yielded to the onset of evening, Charillus concluded his customary military obligations and reunited with Cleomachus at their residence. Their evening repast was unpretentious, consisting of robust barley bread, a portion of cheese, cured olives, and a modest quantity of wine diluted with water. While the renowned black broth, a concoction featuring pork, blood, and vinegar, might grace their table during more ceremonial events, quotidian meals were primarily oriented towards sustenance and nutritional value, rather than Epicurean delight, a further illustration of the pragmatic Spartan disposition. Following their supper, as the encroaching twilight cast a mellow glow upon the terrain, Charillus embarked on a brief stroll to the crest of approximate elevation, accompanied by their 10-year-old son. This nocturnal observance, involving the careful scrutiny of the routes leading into the settlement as dusk descended, was not a mandated official duty, but rather a deeply ingrained custom that numerous Spartan parents instilled in their progeny. They stood in quiet contemplation, the father periodically indicating salient topographical features within the vista. That fissure separating those elevations marks the ingress point of the thoroughfare originating from Tegea. Observe the nuanced interplay of shadows traversing that field. Any individual traversing it would be discernible by the disturbance they create within the established visual sequence. This comprehensive instruction in environmental cognizance epitomized yet another profound adaptation to an existence devoid of fortifications. Spartan children matured with an innate comprehension of their surrounding terrain as an active and responsive defensive mechanism, rather than perceiving security as an attribute conferred by inert, immutable constructions. They acquired the crucial faculty of deciphering minute indicators of perturbation or impending presence, honing their ability to differentiate routine agrarian operations from anomalous movement configurations that could potentially signify impending dangers. As the inky cloak of full darkness descended completely upon the Eurotas Valley, the distinctive unfortified character of Sparta perhaps manifested most conspicuously within the nocturnal customs of its populace. In sharp contrast to the residents of walled urban centers, who could typically unwind and feel secure once the city gates were sealed and bolted for the night, the Spartans upheld a pervasive, decentralized state of alertness across the entire span of darkness. Consistent patrols traversed both within and around the settlement's perimeter. Individual households shared the responsibility of tending watchfires. Younger men, especially, might be designated to repose at critical vantage points rather than within their customary sleeping quarters. This pervasive vigilance was not perceived as an oppressive burden or a source of apprehension. It was, quite simply, the inherent Spartan modus vivendi, as ingrained in their collective consciousness as the formidable stone ramparts of Athens were to its citizens. This intricate framework fostered a societal environment where safeguarding the community was the perpetual, unspoken obligation of every individual, rather than a duty exclusively assigned to designated sentinels or inanimate architectural defenses. Prior to withdrawing for the night, Cleomachie diligently verified that their domestic armaments were in impeccable working order and strategically placed for immediate retrieval should the necessity arise. A further ingrained custom prevalent in Spartan households. Subsequently, she joined Charillus on the modest, sheltered veranda of their abode, where they reposed in serene tranquility, observing the celestial bodies emerge above their unfortified settlement. Their profound sense of security did not emanate from formidable, towering fortifications, but rather from an unwavering conviction in their personal capabilities, the reliability of their fellow citizens, and the robust societal framework they assiduously upheld. The conspicuous absence of defensive walls had fundamentally molded not merely the physical configuration of their city, but indeed their holistic methodology towards community and self-preservation, thereby forging a singular Spartan ethos that prioritized human preparedness above material impediments and diffused alertness over concentrated defensive structures. The hallowed site of Delphi was decidedly not established with ease of access in mind. Perched majestically on the elevated gradients of Mount Parnassus, with the formidable Phaedriades cliffs soaring dramatically overhead, the sacred precinct was intentionally positioned far from convenient thoroughfares. The pilgrimage to this revered location was conceived as an intrinsic component of the spiritual odyssey, a demanding physical exertion designed to mirror the rigorous mental conditioning required before seeking divine counsel. Nevertheless, without meticulously engineered and consistently preserved roadways, This arduous trek would have proven not merely formidable, but frequently insurmountable. Envision a crisp spring dawn, unfolding several decades prior to the zenith of classical Greek civilization. The nascent sunlight had only just commenced its gentle illumination of the eastern facade of Mount Parnassus, yet the depressions and valleys far below remained enveloped in profound chiaroscuro. Along a segment of the venerable sacred pathway that meandered upwards towards Delphi, a man identified as Timocles was already diligently engaged in his labors, perpetuating a venerable family legacy that had endured for 3 consecutive generations. The enduring legacy of meticulous labor on the ancient pathways to Delphi unfolds across a remarkable span of 3 generations, a testament to unwavering dedication. Timocles, a man of earthly practicalities rather than spiritual pronouncements, is neither a priest nor a seer. Instead, he embodies the essence of a road builder, an integral member of a specialized guild whose collective expertise seamlessly blends sophisticated engineering acumen, formidable physical prowess, and an intimate, almost intuitive grasp of the surrounding terrain. His hands, a testament to decades of arduous toil, are deeply calloused from the unceasing manipulation of stone, while his visage bears the indelible marks of constant exposure to the relentless sun and biting winds. At the age of 43, his entire adult life has been intrinsically linked to the construction and upkeep of the routes leading to Delphi. His journey began in his youth, when his strength was sufficient to carry modest stones, assisting his father. Over time, as he demonstrated undeniable competence, he progressively assumed direct responsibility for distinct segments of these vital thoroughfares. This particular morning, Timocles, accompanied by his dedicated compact crew, is diligently engaged in rectifying the ravages inflicted by the preceding winter's torrential rains. Numerous portions of the essential retaining walls have succumbed to displacement, consequently allowing sections of the road's surface to erode significantly. Their endeavor is characterized by its patient, systematic nature. Initially, they meticulously clear away accumulated debris. Subsequently, they carefully reposition the dislodged stones with precision. And finally, they introduce fresh materials to meticulously restore the integrity of the road surface. Their toolkit is refreshingly rudimentary, comprising wooden levers, sturdy ropes, and hammers employed for the necessary shaping of stone. An absence of advanced technological contrivances, relying instead on a rich heritage of accumulated human wisdom applied with scrupulous attention. As their hands and minds are occupied with this demanding work, their voices are hushed, exchanging observations on the quotidian rhythms of life. Discussions about domestic affairs, the fluctuating market price of olive oil, and speculative musings on the anticipated severity of the impending summer. Periodically, their discourse shifts, gravitating towards the diverse array of pilgrims they routinely encounter along this very path, pondering which urban centers appear to be dispatching a greater number of envoys recently, contemplating whether the intrinsic quality of the votive offerings destined for Apollo has undergone a discernible alteration, and discerning how the comportment of travelers varies markedly according to their respective origins. These astute road builders possess an uncanny ability to perceive nuances that often escape the notice of the pilgrims themselves. They can readily distinguish first-time voyagers to Delphi by their distinctive gait and their often awestruck reactions to the breathtaking vistas that unexpectedly unfold along the winding track. They recognize familiar faces, returning visitors who, year after year, instinctively pause at the very same cherished spots. Furthermore, they inherently understand which particular stretches of the road present the greatest challenges for elderly pilgrims, or for those laboriously transporting wheeled carts laden with precious offerings. By the advent of midday, the team has achieved substantial progress in their restorative efforts. Timocles, seeking momentary respite, straightens his back, his gaze sweeping upwards towards the sanctuary, which, from their current elevation, remains tantalizingly concealed. Despite dedicating decades to the very arteries leading to this sacred site, he himself has only graced the temple with his presence on a mere handful of occasions. The road builders, in essence, occupy a fascinating liminal space, absolutely indispensable to the sanctuary's fundamental operation, yet entirely detached from its ceremonial rituals and sacred functions. As they partake in a brief intermission, sharing simple provisions of bread, cheese, and diluted wine beneath the expansive canopy of a venerable plane tree, a new procession of pilgrims materializes and passes by. These are esteemed representatives from a prominent city in Sicily, journeying to seek the oracle's divine counsel regarding a proposed colonial undertaking. The pilgrims, their minds singularly focused on their ultimate destination and the weighty questions they bore, scarcely register the presence of the unassuming workers resting quietly by the roadside. Timocles and his companions observe them with a detached, yet discerning interest, meticulously noting the intricacies of their attire, the discernible quality of their provisions, and the nature of the offerings they carefully transport. Over successive generations, the road builders have cultivated an informal, yet remarkably precise taxonomy of pilgrims. With astonishing accuracy, they can often prognosticate which cities are currently experiencing periods of prosperity or enduring hardship, which are contemplating military engagements, or which are grappling with internal political turmoil, all extrapolated from the subtle patterns they discern in those making the pilgrimage to Delphi. That particular delegation will undoubtedly remain for a minimum of 3 days, remarks Cleon, the youngest member of the team, his observation underscored by years of shared experience. They have brought ample provisions, and their cautious movement of those carefully veiled objects suggests valuable offerings that will necessitate a proper and elaborate ceremonial presentation. Timocles offers a silent nod of affirmation, his agreement rooted in a lifetime of observing travelers. After decades of such keen observation, these insights have become as instinctive to him as discerning shifts in meteorological patterns or the cyclical rhythms of the natural world. The road builders, in their unique capacity, possess a distinct form of wisdom, one that, while differing from, undeniably complements the pronouncements dispensed by the oracle itself, a profound, practical understanding of human patterns and behaviors meticulously gleaned from their unparalleled vantage point. Following their brief but restorative interlude, the arduous work recommences. The afternoon's primary endeavor involves the critical reinforcement of a switchback section, where the road executes a sharp, demanding turn around a formidable rocky outcrop. This task demands an exceptional degree of precision, requiring an innate comprehension of how water will cascade during torrential downpours, how immense weight will be distributed when heavily laden carts traverse the path, and how the insidious encroachment of roots from proximate trees might gradually compromise the meticulous placement of stones. As they labor, Timocles subtly imparts his accumulated wisdom to Cleon, not through formal didactic instruction, but through quiet, practical demonstrations and occasional, insightful comments. This particular stone needs to be set more deeply into the earth. Feel how this one possesses a natural curvature that will expertly channel water towards the designated drainage channel. We will meticulously place the flattest stones on the uppermost layer to ensure easier and safer passage for pedestrians. This method of knowledge transfer mirrors the very process by which Timocles himself learned from his father and his father before him, a rich heritage of expertise transmitted through the shared crucible of work and vigilant observation. The road leading to Delphi is not merely a singular, finite construction project, but rather a profound, multi-generational commitment to ceaseless maintenance and continuous enhancement. Certain segments of this ancient artery faithfully follow routes established many centuries prior, gradually evolving from rudimentary dirt tracks into properly formalized stone-paved thoroughfares. Other portions represent innovative solutions to the perennial challenges posed by the formidable mountain's geological composition and its unpredictable weather patterns. Different stretches of the road conspicuously exhibit diverse building techniques, effectively serving as a tangible historical record of evolving knowledge and craftsmanship over time. Here, an older section prominently features massive, irregularly shaped stones, meticulously fitted together with smaller, carefully wedged pieces. In stark contrast, a newer portion showcases more uniform stone cutting and a demonstrably more sophisticated control over the road's gradient. Thus, the road functions not only as vital practical infrastructure, but also as a living historical document, revealing profound changes in construction technology and strategic approaches across the ages. As the afternoon gradually yields to the encroaching evening, Timocles and his dedicated team commence the systematic gathering of their tools. They will not undertake the descent to the village below, but will instead pass the night in a modest shelter, specifically maintained for road workers at this particular elevation. These unassuming structures, little more than robust stone walls crowned with wooden roofs, are strategically positioned at regular intervals along the treacherous mountain roads, thereby enabling maintenance teams to operate with optimal efficiency, circumventing the arduous daily ascents and descents. The shelter itself contains simple sleeping platforms, a rudimentary hearth for both cooking and warmth, secure storage for tools and essential emergency supplies, and a meticulously engineered water system designed to efficiently collect rainfall. It offers little in the way of comfort when measured against the standards of the towns nestled in the valley below. Yet it is profoundly familiar to Timocles, who has passed innumerable nights in similar austere lodgings throughout his extensive working life. As they prepare a simple evening meal, another solitary traveler passes by, an elderly man making his slow, deliberate descent down the mountain, returning from the sanctuary. He pauses upon noticing the road workers, approaches their flickering fire, and courteously inquires if he might rest briefly before resuming his arduous journey. They extend a warm welcome, offering him a place by the comforting fire and a refreshing cup of watered wine. The venerable old man reveals that he has undertaken this annual pilgrimage for many decades. He recounts how he distinctly remembers when this specific section of the road was significantly different, prior to the substantial improvements implemented during Timil's father's era. He speaks of these transformative changes with profound appreciation, noting how considerably easier the journey has become, particularly for older visitors such as himself. This moment represents a rare and cherished instance of direct acknowledgement for work that by its very nature typically goes unheralded. The road builders do not receive the accolades, honors, or public recognition bestowed upon priests or official sanctuary functionaries. Their names are conspicuously absent from the numerous inscriptions that adorn Delphi's magnificent monuments. Yet, their tireless efforts touch upon every conceivable aspect of the oracle's complex operation, facilitating the unimpeded flow of questions, offerings, and the profound wisdom that fundamentally defines the sanctuary's overarching purpose. As the cloak of darkness descends upon the mountain, their elderly visitor continues on his journey downwards, moving cautiously with the indispensable aid of a sturdy walking stick. Timocles and his team settle into their familiar evening routine, meticulously checking their tools, deliberating on the next day's demanding tasks, and engaging in quiet, reflective conversation before succumbing to sleep. From their elevated vantage point, they can discern small, nascent lights beginning to appear in the valley below as households ignite their evening lamps. Above, the celestial tapestry of stars emerges with breathtaking clarity in the crisp mountain air. This unique interstitial existence, neither fully integrated into the sanctuary above nor wholly belonging to the villages below, has profoundly shaped a particular and distinct perspective among the road builders. They perceive themselves not as principal actors in the grand drama of divine consultation, but rather as indispensable facilitators. Their profound satisfaction emanates not from external recognition, but from an intrinsic sense of functionality, from the deeply gratifying knowledge that, owing to their tireless efforts, an elderly man can safely undertake his annual pilgrimage. A city's esteemed representatives can transport invaluable offerings without damage, or a worried parent can bring a sick child to seek divine healing. Timocles drifts into slumber, his mind preoccupied with a specific, formidable challenge awaiting them later in the week. A particularly troublesome section where water persistently undermines their previous solutions, necessitating an entirely fresh and innovative approach. His final conscious thoughts are not of deities or enigmatic prophecies, but rather of the precise placement of stones and the optimal angles for drainage, the practical, tangible puzzles that have consumed his intellect throughout his entire working life. Even as he sleeps, pilgrims continue their journey along the very road he meticulously maintains, some intrepid souls traveling through the night by the flickering illumination of torchlight. Eager to reach the sacred sanctuary by dawn, their feet find secure purchase on surfaces meticulously shaped by generations of Timocles' family and countless others like them, treading on stones carefully positioned to provide unwavering stability. Their paths are diligently protected by robust retaining walls, expertly engineered to withstand the relentless onslaught of winter storms and the torrential downpours of summer. The oracle's renowned wisdom, those often ambiguous yet profoundly influential prophecies that shaped decisions affecting thousands, traverse it out into the wider world along these very same pathways, carried by pilgrims returning to their respective cities. The roads, therefore, served as conduits not merely for physical travel, but for the dynamic movement of ideas, pressing questions, and invaluable divine guidance between the hallowed grounds of Delphi and the broader, interconnected world. He was a man of quiet diligence, neither a revered priest nor an influential politician whose pronouncements would reverberate through the ages, nor an acclaimed artist whose masterworks would inspire future generations. His station was that of a simple counter of sacrifices, the dedicated individual responsible for scrupulously documenting the diverse offerings presented to Athena, the revered patron goddess of Athens. His name was Philocrates, and for an impressive 27 years, he faithfully discharged the duties of a role that skillfully integrated the responsibilities of an accountant, an inspector, an inventory manager, and an essential religious functionary within the sacred precinct. Every single offering brought to Athena's hallowed temple on the majestic Acropolis underwent his stringent and watchful examination. Each animal ritually sacrificed, every libation ceremoniously poured, and every object reverently dedicated. All were painstakingly chronicled in his precise script upon both the ephemeral wax tablets and the more enduring papyrus scrolls, forming an exhaustive compendium of devotion. One might easily envision a radiant spring morning in the heart of Athens, the kind of day where the pervasive light seems to imbue the Parthenon's pristine marble with an ethereal inner luminescence. Philocrates, now in his 53rd year, has already been engaged in his demanding duties for several hours. He consistently rises before the first glimmer of dawn on most days, a disciplined habit meticulously cultivated in his youth and steadfastly maintained through many decades of unwavering practice. His designated workspace is a modest chamber discreetly attached to the sprawling temple complex. It is neither ostentatious nor grandly impressive, but rather eminently practical, benefiting from abundant natural light streaming through a south-facing window, and its walls are lined with shelves meticulously organized with recording implements and a vast archive of historical documents. His morning regimen invariably commences with a thorough review of the preceding day's meticulously entered notations, diligently cross-referencing his numerical tallies against the tangible remnants still present. The lingering ashes within the sacrificial hearths, the subtle traces of wine staining the altars, and the recently positioned votive offerings upon the dedication shelves. This meticulous verification is not born of any self-doubt regarding his own arithmetical precision, but rather from the profound understanding that absolute accuracy in all matters pertaining to the divine is not merely a commendable professional standard, but an inviolable sacred obligation. A single miscounted sacrifice could inadvertently signify an improper honor bestowed upon Athena. A forgotten or unrecorded offering might regrettably imply a grave negligence in the performance of one's divine service. The essential instruments of Philocrates' exacting profession are commendably simple yet highly effective. Wooden tablets meticulously coated with a layer of wax for the purpose of daily, transient notations, delicate papyrus sheets reserved for the creation of permanent, enduring records, finely crafted reed pens, rich, dark ink meticulously concocted from oak galls, and a modest assortment of elementary calculating aids, smooth pebbles employed for straightforward counting, and a more sophisticated abacus utilized for the execution of intricate tallies and complex computations. His hands, though not bearing the rough calluses typically associated with arduous physical labor, nonetheless exhibit the subtle, telltale marks of his specialized vocation. Faint, persistent ink stains visible around his fingernails, a slight, almost imperceptible bend in his right index finger, a consequence of countless hours spent in diligent transcription over decades, and a small, distinct burn scar etched onto his left palm, a lingering memento from an unfortunate accident involving sealing wax many years prior. By the advent of mid-morning, the level of activity within the temple precinct noticeably escalates. Today, it is not a grand, city-wide festival, but rather an unremarkable, ordinary day in the bustling life of Athens. Yet, even on such routine days, there is a consistent and steady procession of worshippers presenting their diverse offerings. A prosperous merchant, recently returned from a highly successful trading voyage, approaches to dedicate a finely wrought silver cup, an embodiment of his gratitude and prosperity. A solicitous mother, whose beloved child has miraculously recovered from a grave illness, tenderly offers a small, intricately sculpted clay figurine, a heartfelt expression of thanksgiving. A diligent farmer presents a healthy goat for sacrifice, an act of profound gratitude and thanksgiving for the timely rains that providentially saved his precious crops from impending ruin. Each individual offering meticulously adheres to long-established protocols, with the revered priests or priestesses assiduously performing the requisite sacred rituals. Philocrates diligently observes these solemn proceedings from his designated vantage point, positioned slightly to the side. He is not central to the dramatic spectacle of the ceremonies themselves, yet his presence is undeniably essential for their meticulous and accurate recording. He assiduously notes not merely the fundamental fact of each sacrifice or dedication, but also a wealth of specific, pertinent details. The precise age and inherent quality of the animals, the intricate craftsmanship and intrinsic material composition of the dedicated objects, the social standing or status of the benevolent giver, and the explicitly stated purpose or intention behind the offering. These granular details hold significant importance for a multitude of compelling reasons. Primarily, they facilitate the tracking of evolving patterns in worship practices over extended periods of time, revealing shifts in devotional trends. Secondly, they furnish invaluable insights into the prevailing economic conditions of Athens. For instance, more opulent and expensive offerings tend to materialize during periods of widespread prosperity, while leaner, more challenging times are often characterized by the appearance of simpler, more modest gifts. Thirdly, these comprehensive records establish an indispensable historical archive that can be meticulously consulted should any questions or disputes arise concerning the proper maintenance of sacred observances. Finally, and crucially, they assist temple officials in efficiently managing a myriad of practical considerations, such as the equitable distribution of sacrificial meat or the judicious arrangement and storage of dedicated objects within the often limited confines of the sacred space. Around the customary hour of midday, Philocrates permits himself a brief respite, embarking upon a measured and unhurried stroll around the perimeter of the venerable temple structure. This daily ritual serves a dual purpose. It offers his eyes a much-needed reprieve from the intense, close-focused scrutiny demanded by his ledgers, and simultaneously provides a tranquil moment to fully appreciate the profound sanctity of the space he so diligently serves. Although he has gazed upon the majestic Parthenon literally thousands of times throughout his tenure, he invariably finds himself pausing, captivated by how the ever-shifting light plays across its magnificent sculptures, or how the subtle, almost imperceptible curves of its towering columns cunningly conspire to create an illusion of perfect, unwavering straightness. During his contemplative walk, he happens upon a fellow colleague, an individual whose primary responsibility lies in meticulously maintaining the intricate treasury records for the temple. Their respective duties, while distinct, nonetheless exhibit areas of significant overlap. Whereas Philocrates diligently counts and records all offerings irrespective of their inherent monetary value, his colleague's focus is specifically directed towards tracking valuable items and all forms of currency that enter the temple's coffers. Their ensuing conversation is characteristically concise and eminently practical, briefly touching upon a minor discrepancy identified in the previous month's tallies that requires an immediate resolution, and also discussing the impending preparations for an upcoming festival, an event certain to substantially increase their collective workload. Upon his return to the demanding nature of his duties, Philocrates dedicates the afternoon hours to meticulously processing the extensive records pertaining to a particularly grand sacrifice, generously sponsored by one of the city's most affluent and influential families. This substantial offering, comprising multiple cattle, necessitates an exceptionally detailed level of documentation, encompassing not only precise information about the animals themselves, but also a thorough accounting of how the meat is subsequently distributed. Specific portions are allocated to the esteemed priests. Other shares are reserved for the sponsoring family, and still more are distributed among the citizens who attend the public sacrifice. Ensuring a fair and scrupulously proper distribution, in strict accordance with time-honored tradition, presents a complex logistical challenge that falls, in part, under Philocrates' experienced supervision. As he meticulously works through these intricate calculations, a diligent young man named Theocritos observes him quietly, absorbing every detail. Theocritos has been formally assigned as Philocrates' assistant and is considered his potential successor, undergoing a comprehensive apprenticeship in the complex system of record-keeping that has meticulously evolved over countless generations. The esteemed position of sacrifice counter is not an inherited one, but instead demands extensive, specialized training, not merely in the foundational disciplines of mathematics and writing, but also in developing a profound understanding of intricate religious protocols, the ability to accurately recognize and categorize diverse types of offerings, and the crucial skill of maintaining the delicate and often challenging balance between administrative efficiency and profound, sacred respect. Philocrates does not impart his vast knowledge through formal, didactic lessons, but rather through the powerful medium of demonstrated practice and occasional, insightful explanations. Observe closely, he instructs Theocritos, his voice calm and measured, how we diligently record not merely the sheer number of animals, but also their inherent quality. A blemished animal must be meticulously noted, not because the goddess inherently rejects such offerings from sincere worshippers of modest means, but because certain sacred rituals specifically mandate the use of unblemished animals. Our comprehensive records, therefore, serve to ensure proper and respectful matches between the precise requirements of a ritual and the nature of the offerings presented. As the afternoon gradually transitions towards the gentle embrace of evening, a formal delegation arrives from a rural district situated beyond the immediate confines of Athens proper. They have journeyed to present their annual offering, a significant contribution of high-quality olive oil harvested from their communal groves, traditionally bestowed to perpetually maintain the eternal flame within a small, revered shrine dedicated to Athena. Such consistent, regular offerings constitute the very backbone of the temple's ongoing operations, providing the necessary provisions and supplies for the uninterrupted continuation of its sacred rituals. Philocrates receives them with the quiet, inherent dignity that consistently characterizes his interactions with all worshippers, whether they be powerful city officials or humble, unassuming farmers. He meticulously inspects the olive oil, carefully assessing its clarity and inherent quality, then measures it with precise exactitude before diligently recording the exact amount in his comprehensive ledger. The delegation watches this meticulous process with respectful attention, understanding its profound significance. The careful measurement unequivocally confirms that their offering is properly acknowledged, thoroughly documented, and will be utilized precisely as intended, thereby upholding transparency and trust in the sacred transaction. This particular interaction powerfully underscores another critically important facet of Philocrates' multifaceted role. He serves as an impartial witness and a steadfast guarantor that all offerings reach their proper and intended destination. In a religious system that lacks a singular, centralized authority or universally codified sacred texts, proper observance depends to a very large extent on correctly maintained tradition and transparent, verifiable practice. The meticulous records diligently kept by dedicated individuals like Philocrates play an indispensable role in ensuring that obligations to the gods are met consistently and without deviation, despite any changes in personnel or shifting political circumstances. As the day's radiant light begins its gentle descent, softening towards the approaching evening, Philocrates diligently completes his final tallies and meticulously prepares his working materials for the ensuing day. This transitional period, occupying the liminal space between the full vibrancy of day and the deep stillness of night, is typically when he transfers the accumulated information from the temporary wax tablets to the more permanent and enduring papyrus records. The now quiet temple, with the majority of its daily visitors having departed, provides the ideal conditions for the concentrated work that demands unwavering accuracy and meticulous attention to detail. The permanent records meticulously created by Philocrates serve multiple vital purposes that extend far beyond mere religious accounting. They become an integral component of Athens's invaluable institutional memory, forming a rich archive of documents that can be scrupulously consulted during disputes, referenced for crucial historical perspective, or utilized to identify significant patterns requiring strategic attention. For instance, when periods of severe drought reveal a noticeable decline in animal sacrifices, city officials might observe this trend and consequently recognize the urgent need for grain imports. Similarly, when the ominous specter of war looms large, they might observe a discernible increase in offerings directed to Athena in her protective aspect, reflecting the populace's fervent prayers for divine safeguard. Beyond these tangible, practical applications, the comprehensive records establish an unbreakable, tangible connection between past and present observances. When Philocrates consults ancient scrolls dating back decades, some of which possibly contain entries meticulously made by his predecessors during his own childhood, he actively participates in a profound continuity of practice that transcends individual human lifespans. The venerable worship of Athena in Athens existed long before his birth and will undoubtedly persist long after his passing. Yet, for this precise moment in time, he serves as its meticulous, dedicated, and indispensable chronicler, ensuring its enduring legacy. He meticulously chronicles its every detail. As twilight descends and the hallowed lamps flicker to life across the expansive temple grounds, Philocrates prepares for his modest journey homeward to the bustling city nestled beneath the majestic Acropolis. Before his departure, he observes a small personal rite, a brief, heartfelt entreaty to Athena, not offered at the grand public altar, but at an unadorned shrine tucked away in the quiet corner of his workspace. It is a serene instant of communion between an individual and the divine, a profound link connecting the meticulous record keeper and the very subjects of his careful enumeration. Descending from the venerable heights of the Acropolis, Philocrates encounters groups still making their ascent, individuals arriving to present their evening offerings or to witness the sublime transformation from daylight to night within the sacred confines. He offers a respectful nod to those he recognizes, yet refrains from engaging in prolonged discourse. After an entire day dedicated to observing and meticulously documenting the diverse religious expressions of others, he cherishes this tranquil interlude for profound, personal introspection. His customary path home leads him through the bustling agora, now gradually winding down from the day's fervent commercial activities. He pauses momentarily at the stall of a bread seller. The woman, recognizing him as a devoted patron, thoughtfully reserves a particular dark, rustic loaf he especially favors. Their exchange is fleeting yet genuinely warm, a small, poignant moment of human connection in a role frequently defined by detached observation rather than direct, personal engagement. Within the confines of his own dwelling, Philocrates embraces a life of unpretentious simplicity. His esteemed position provides a steady, albeit modest, income, entirely sufficient for his fundamental needs, yet it offers no path to accumulating significant wealth. His home contains but a few luxuries, though it proudly houses a small personal collection of diverse calculating instruments gathered from various distant regions, tools remarkably similar to his professional implements, acquired over countless years from itinerant traders or erudite visitors to Athens. Each device boasts a subtly distinct design, eloquently reflecting the unique mathematical practices of its locale, serving as a silent testament to how universal human necessities, such as the fundamental act of counting, manifest in myriad forms across disparate cultures. Following a simple evening repast, Philocrates frequently immerses himself in practical treatises on mathematics and precise measurement, rather than religious texts or abstruse philosophical dissertations. Presently, he is engrossed in a scholarly work elucidating ancient Egyptian accounting methodologies, driven by an inherent curiosity about how another venerable civilization, with its intricate system of religious offerings, meticulously manages its extensive record-keeping. This continuous pursuit of knowledge is not a stipulated requirement of his official capacity, but rather a vivid reflection of his profound, intrinsic interest in the elaborate systems that empower humanity to meticulously organize its complex interactions, both with fellow beings and with the revered divine. One might be compelled to contemplate the often unseen endeavors of chroniclers throughout history, those diligent individuals who painstakingly generated the very documentation through which modern society gleans its understanding of past civilizations. Alternatively, one might find appreciation in this poignant reminder that religious observance in ancient Greece encompassed not merely inspired instances of divine communion, but also demanded meticulous, unwavering administrative diligence, where the sacred and the procedural coexisted not in opposition, but in an indispensable, harmonious partnership. We shall now delve into another frequently overlooked dimension of Greek religious existence: the serene, vital task of preserving Hestia's sacred flames, the revered hearth fires that symbolized the enduring vitality of the household, the community, and the very state itself. Let us direct our collective attention to perhaps the most neglected of all the principal Olympian deities, Hestia, the venerable goddess of the hearth and home. While the mighty Zeus commanded the thunderbolts and the formidable Poseidon governed the vast seas, Hestia's dominion was the unassuming hearth fire, yet no divine power was more perpetually present in the fabric of daily Greek life, and none demanded more continuous human vigilance to diligently maintain. Within the intricate hierarchy of the Greek gods, Hestia occupied a singularly intriguing position. Despite being one of the original 6 Olympian progeny, the daughter of Cronus and Rhea, and a revered sister to Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, and Demeter, her appearances in myths or artistic representations are strikingly rare. She never entered into matrimony, bore no offspring, abstained from divine squabbles, nor embarked on grand adventures alongside heroes. Yet, notwithstanding this narrative scarcity, she invariably received the inaugural portion of every household sacrifice and diligently sustained sacred fires in every Greek community. To truly fathom the profound significance of Hestia and her enduring fires, we must first grasp the practical and symbolic import of the hearth in the tapestry of ancient Greek life. Envision a humble dwelling in the bustling city of Athens or a tranquil village nestled in the verdant countryside. At its very core, both physically and metaphorically, blazes the hearth fire. This is not merely a utilitarian cooking flame or a simple source of warmth, but rather the vibrant, living heart of the entire household, a diminutive divine presence graciously dwelling amongst mortals. Let us trace one such journey through a typical day, observing the quiet, yet utterly essential, labor of sustaining Hestia's benevolent presence. Our focus will be the home of Diaris, a middle-aged Athenian woman whose household encompasses her husband Nicias, a skilled carpenter, their 3 spirited children, Nicias's venerable elderly father, and 2 household slaves. Diaris commences her day before the first hint of dawn, when the entire house is enveloped in silence, save for the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleepers and the subtle, comforting crackle of the carefully banked hearth fire. Her paramount task each morning is to gently rekindle this sacred fire, not by igniting it anew, which would only occur under very specific ceremonial circumstances, but by assiduously nurturing the embers that have been meticulously preserved throughout the night. This pivotal morning ritual is not performed with haste. Diaris kneels before the hearth with the serene concentration of one engaged in a truly sacred endeavor. She delicately removes the layer of ashes concealing the coals, adds small, dry kindling, fragrant dried herbs, slender twigs, delicate pieces of straw, and softly breathes upon them to encourage the nascent flames. As the fire gains strength, she offers a brief, whispered supplication to Hestia, not an elaborate, formal invocation, but the kind of familiar, intimate communication that naturally blossoms between an individual and the divine presence they diligently attend to on a daily basis. The hearth itself is unadorned, a simple circular clay structure raised slightly above the floor level, strategically positioned so its smoke can gracefully ascend through an opening in the roof. It is encircled by well-worn stones, bearing the indelible marks of decades of continuous use. This particular hearth was established when Nietzsche's esteemed grandfather constructed the house 2 generations prior, and its sacred fire has been continuously maintained ever since, faithfully passed down from mother-in-law to daughter-in-law as household responsibilities transitioned. As Dearest meticulously tends to the fire, her movements are neither hurried nor formally ritualized in any strict sense. They exhibit the fluid efficiency characteristic of actions performed thousands of times before. Each household develops its own unique, specific practices for hearth maintenance. Small, treasured traditions transmitted through careful observation and diligent practice rather than through written instruction. The precise manner in which Dearest arranges the kindling, the specific herbs she occasionally adds to the flames, the particular pattern in which she sweeps the hearth area, all collectively reflect generations of accumulated household custom and wisdom. Once the fire is properly awakened and robust, Dearest commences the preparation of the morning meal. Cooking over Hestia's sacred fire is not merely a practical necessity, but a profound continuation of divine service. The demarcation between religious observance and daily life is remarkably permeable here. The very same flame that receives formal offerings also lovingly cooks the family's sustenance, heats their water for washing, and provides essential warmth on chilly mornings. As other members of the household awaken and gather around the comforting hearth, each acknowledges Hestia's benevolent presence in their own distinct manner. Nasius's elderly father, despite his limited mobility, performs a small, reverent gesture towards the flames before partaking of his morning meal. The children, from their earliest awareness, have been carefully instructed never to spit into the fire, to discard refuse into it, or to treat it with any casual disregard, not out of mere superstition, but from a profound understanding that the hearth represents something far beyond its mere physical form. Throughout the entire day, Dearest or another responsible member of the household remains acutely aware of the fire's continuous needs. Unlike modern appliances that can be simply switched off and forgotten, the hearth demands ongoing vigilance. Fuel must be added at appropriate intervals, ashes carefully managed, and occasional adjustments made to ensure proper, sustained burning. This constant attention is not perceived as an onerous burden, but rather as a natural, integrated rhythm seamlessly woven into the tapestry of other household activities. By midday, Dearest is diligently engaged in weaving, while simultaneously keeping an occasional watchful eye on the fire. The youngest child, a girl of 7, sits nearby, eagerly learning simple fiber preparation techniques. Their conversation effortlessly transitions between practical instruction, "You'll hold the wool like this between your fingers," and casual storytelling, some of which feature Hestia prominently. How she chose to tend the central fire rather than marry, how she adeptly mediates disputes between other gods without ever taking sides, and how she imparts patience through the slow, transformative process of converting raw ingredients into nourishing food. When a neighbor pays a visit to borrow a cooking implement, she pauses briefly before the hearth upon entering, a respectful gesture acknowledging that she is being received not merely into a physical structure, but into the sacred domain protected by another family's Hestia. This subtle, yet profound, observance eloquently reflects how thoroughly divine presence was integrated into the fabric of social customs. The hearth unequivocally marks the transition between the external world and the internal sanctuary, between public space and private intimacy, between a stranger and a cherished guest. The most significant hearth ritual unfolds with the evening meal, the most substantial repast of the day and the one most likely to include all household members. Before partaking, Nicias, as the esteemed head of the household, offers a small portion of food and a few precious drops of wine to the fire. This is not an elaborate sacrifice accompanied by formal prayers, but a simple, heartfelt acknowledgement of Hestia's paramount priority. She receives the inaugural portion because her enduring presence renders all else possible and sustained. The very essence of her divine presence establishes the foundation upon which all other domestic activities and communal bonds can flourish and find their ultimate possibility. Within the immediate vicinity of the hearth, the family habitually partook of their meals, their gathered circle mirroring the inherent rounded shape of the hearth itself. During these shared moments, their discourse meandered through the mundane, yet vital aspects of daily existence. The tasks diligently completed throughout the day, the essential provisions required from the bustling marketplace, intriguing tidings gleaned from the lively agora, and the joyful anticipation of forthcoming celebratory festivals. Far exceeding its practical provisions of corporeal warmth and sustenance, the fire served as a profound epicenter, intrinsically drawing every member of the household into a cohesive and meaningful community. As the twilight hours deepened and the day began to wane, the bustling activity surrounding the hearth slowly subsided, yielding to a more tranquil rhythm. The younger progeny were lovingly tucked into their sleeping quarters in a separate, quieter section of the dwelling. Nicias, a diligent craftsman, occupied himself by the flickering illumination of the fire, meticulously undertaking minor repairs to a worn piece of domestic furniture, his hands skilled and steady. Concurrently, his father recounted tales from his own formative years to the eldest son, weaving narratives that bridged generations. Dearest, ever prescient, brought to completion the meticulous preparations for the following day's essential bread-making, carefully arranging the necessary ingredients so they would be perfectly poised for her to rekindle the fire's embers at the break of dawn. The culminating hearth ritual of the day entailed the meticulous process known as banking the fire, a careful act of enshrouding the glowing embers with a precise layer of ashes. This intricate method was designed to preserve a core of coals throughout the nocturnal hours, preventing the emergence of active flames. Such a delicate operation demanded an acute and intuitive comprehension of the exact quantity of ash required. An excessive application risked extinguishing the vital fire altogether, while an insufficient amount could cause it to combust with undue haste, depleting its energy long before the arrival of morning. Dearest, having honed her proficiency through countless years of dedicated practice, executed this crucial duty on the majority of the evenings, her technique a testament to her accumulated wisdom. The profound significance inherent in preserving an unbroken, continuous fire became strikingly evident upon contemplation of the available alternatives. Should a domestic hearth fire unfortunately expire entirely, it could not be nonchalantly reignited through rudimentary friction techniques, which were acknowledged as both arduous to perform and inherently unreliable. Instead, the sacred flame had to be ceremonially retrieved from an external source, most advantageously from the community's perpetually tended public hearth, housed within the Prytanian, or civic town hall. This act transcended mere pragmatic expediency. It embodied a profound ritualistic reconnection, serving as a tangible acknowledgement that the individual household fires ultimately drew their vital spark from the collective, enduring flame of the wider community. These prominent public hearths served as potent symbols, embodying Hestia's omnipresent spiritual essence at the very core of the civic sphere. In the illustrious city of Athens, for instance, the venerable public hearth, situated within the Prytaneon, was meticulously maintained to burn without cessation, its eternal flame vigilantly tended by specifically appointed officials. When groups of intrepid colonists embarked upon their journeys to establish nascent settlements, they conscientiously transported a portion of this sacred fire from the original Athenian hearth to their new geographical location, thereby ensuring an unbroken, enduring spiritual and cultural nexus with their community of origin. Consequently, Hestia's revered fires wove an intricate tapestry, linking individual families to their broader communities, connecting these communities to their ancestral past, and binding nascent colonies to their venerable mother cities, thereby forging an indelible continuity that transcended both spatial and temporal boundaries. The sustained upkeep of these esteemed public hearths necessitated a more formalized array of rituals compared to the simpler observances within private households, yet their fundamental essence remained rooted in the pragmatic and continuous labor of fire tending. In certain polis, this solemn responsibility was entrusted to young women in the innocent years preceding their marital unions, or conversely, to older women who had passed beyond their childbearing age. In other urban centers, male civic officials bore the primary oversight of the sacred flame, though frequently they were supported by female assistants who performed the actual hands-on tending. These were not illustrious religious positions adorned with elaborate, showy ceremonies. Rather, they demanded a steadfast, daily commitment to service, characterized by unwavering patience and an unwavering, consistent attentiveness to the perpetual flame. Returning our focus to Dirce's tranquil abode, with the hearth now meticulously banked and secured for the impending night, and profound stillness enveloped the entire dwelling. The final individual to withdraw for slumber paused momentarily beside the banked fire, perhaps allowing their hand to gently brush against the still warm stones of the hearth's perimeter, or perhaps uttering a soft, whispered valediction to the unseen, watchful presence that would silently safeguard the household throughout the long hours of darkness. Even in their repose, the family members instinctively maintained their orientation around Hestia's sacred domain, their sleeping quarters having been traditionally arranged with a conscious and reverent reference to the central position of the hearth. The tangible edifice encompassing this family, comprised of robust wooden beams, solid stone walls, and protective clay roof tiles, undeniably offered essential shelter from the elements. However, it was indisputably Hestia's sacred fire that possessed the profound capacity to transmute mere shelter into a genuine home, imbued with soul and warmth. Should the family ever find it necessary to relocate their residence, they would ceremonially transport a portion of this very fire from their existing hearth to their new dwelling, thereby guaranteeing the unbroken continuity of the same divine presence across distinct physical locations. This deeply ingrained understanding of home as fundamentally centered upon a sacred, living fire, rather than being solely defined by its physical architecture, profoundly influenced Hellenic notions of belonging, rootedness, and the poignant experience of displacement. To exist without a personal hearth and a true home signified far more than merely lacking material shelter. It symbolized a profound and unsettling disconnection from the fundamental divine-human relationship that served as the very anchor for individual identity within the intricate fabric of family and the wider community. One might perhaps feel compelled to contemplate the analogous focal points within one's own contemporary living environment. Those elements that serve to centralize and coalesce activity, those requiring consistent and attentive care, and those profound aspects that metamorphose a mere structural entity into a truly meaningful and cherished place. While a negligible number of modern domiciles incorporate actual literal hearth fires, the innate human yearning for a sense of centering and the intrinsic sacredness attributed to the concept of home has endured as an unwavering constant throughout the annals of centuries. For the concluding segment of our exploration into the more understated facets of ancient Greek daily existence, let us now direct our collective focus towards the intricate network of waterways that seamlessly interconnected the geographically dispersed regions of the Hellenic world. Across these aqueous pathways, ranging from meandering narrow rivers to the boundless expanse of the Mediterranean Sea, traversed an immeasurable multitude of modest vessels, expertly piloted by individuals whose very names have regrettably faded from the records of history. The unassuming boatmen who diligently conveyed legendary heroes, astute merchants, devout pilgrims, and ordinary travelers alike. Despite their infrequent mention in the grand narratives of myths or formal historical chronicles, these indispensable figures rendered the vital service of facilitating connectivity within a land whose identity was sculpted as profoundly by its maritime domain as by its terrestrial expanse. When one immerses oneself in the captivating narratives of Theseus, embarking on his perilous voyage to Crete to confront the monstrous Minotaur, or of Jason valiantly guiding the Argonauts in their epic quest for the fabled Golden Fleece, our attention is invariably drawn to the heroic protagonists themselves. Nevertheless, an undeniable necessity existed for skilled individuals to expertly manage those vessels, to possess an intimate understanding of shifting winds and powerful currents, and to competently navigate perilous, often treacherous, maritime passages. It was these anonymous boatmen, whether engaged as paid professionals or serving as conscripted crew members, who, through their invaluable practical expertise and unwavering daily toil, rendered every single mythic journey not merely conceivable, but fundamentally possible. Let us now endeavor to envision one such exemplary individual, whom we shall henceforth refer to as Dorius. At the seasoned age of 45 years, he has dedicated a remarkable 3 decades of his life to a diligent profession upon the water, commencing his maritime career as a mere boy assisting his father, and now proudly commanding his own modest vessel. This craft is a robust wooden boat, measuring approximately 20 feet in length, ingeniously designed to be propelled by both sails and oars, adapting to the prevailing atmospheric and oceanic conditions. His established primary itinerary reliably links the illustrious city of Athens with several proximate coastal communities, occasionally venturing forth to more remote ports when propitious and lucrative opportunities present themselves. We now join Dorius on an unassuming late summer morning at the bustling port of Piraeus, Athens's vibrant and ever-active harbor. He has conscientiously arrived well before the first blush of dawn to meticulously prepare his boat for the day's impending labors. rigorously inspecting its structural integrity. His checks include ensuring that the hull remains perfectly sound, that the sail exhibits no fresh tears demanding mending, and that the oars are immaculately secured within their designated locks. These crucial preliminary tasks are executed with the methodical precision and profound attentiveness characteristic of an individual whose very livelihood, and indeed his safety, is inextricably linked to the unwavering reliability of his essential maritime equipment. His unassuming vessel, though modest in its outward appearance, nonetheless embodies the zenith of generations of pragmatic design evolution, a testament to centuries of maritime ingenuity. Its expertly conceived shape ingeniously harmonizes the critical attributes of stability with swiftness, and the depth of its draft with its vital carrying capacity. The timber utilized in its construction has been painstakingly chosen, precisely cut, and seamlessly joined, subsequently rendered completely watertight through the application of protective pitch. The sail, a robust and resilient fabric, is meticulously woven from tough fibers and necessitates regular treatment to effectively counteract the corrosive effects of rot stemming from incessant exposure to saline water. Each intricate element of the boat profoundly reflects an accumulated reservoir of practical knowledge, diligently transmitted from one seasoned boatman to the next, a wisdom seldom codified in written form, yet assiduously preserved and perfected through continuous, hands-on practice. As the eastern horizon began to brighten with the nascent light of dawn, prospective passengers commenced their arrival at the bustling harbor. Dorius, unlike contemporary transportation providers, adhered to no rigid predetermined timetable. Rather, his departure was contingent upon amassing a sufficient complement of passengers or cargo to render the voyage economically viable and worthwhile. Nevertheless, he enjoyed a sterling reputation for unwavering reliability, and seasoned travelers who frequented the route understood implicitly that they could, with reasonable certainty, anticipate finding him prepared to set sail by the approximate hour of mid-morning. The inaugural passenger of the day proved to be an astute merchant named Critias, whose immediate requirement was passage to a coastal town situated approximately 4 hours' journey distant. He was in the process of conveying delicate samples of exquisite Athenian pottery intended for display to prospective buyers. While not a voluminous consignment, its inherent value was considerable enough to readily warrant the associated transportation fee. Dorius, with characteristic diligence, assisted him in meticulously stowing the fragile samples within the boat's compact, covered compartment, a space specifically designed to shield them from any potentially damaging sea spray. Their ensuing conversation was notably succinct and entirely pragmatic, primarily revolving around the prevailing weather outlook for the day and the anticipated duration of their upcoming maritime transit. This particular encounter was by no means their initial interaction. Critias, a discerning and frequent traveler along this route, had progressively developed a distinct preference for Dorius's vessel above the myriad other options available within the bustling harbor. He particularly valued the boatman's exceptionally careful and judicious navigation, alongside his commendable avoidance of superfluous stops, attributes that held significant importance, especially when one was entrusted with the conveyance of fragile and easily breakable merchandise. As the morning hours steadily advanced, additional passengers began to converge upon the harbor. 2 women journeying to visit their kin in the aforementioned coastal community. A nimble young man, who served as an indispensable messenger, traversing the distances between disparate family properties, and an older, enigmatic traveler who, while not divulging the precise nature of his business, nevertheless settled his fare with commendable promptness. Each individual exchanged succinct salutations with Dorius, who, with practiced ease, aided them in boarding and locating suitable seating arrangements within the boat's inherently confined spatial limitations. He remained acutely attentive to the crucial aspect of proper weight distribution, subtly repositioning cargo as needed to meticulously compensate for the varying arrangement of his passengers. Having attained complete satisfaction with the meticulous loading process, Dorius then performed a conclusive consultation of the overarching sky and the undulating surface of the water, discerning intricate meteorological indicators that the majority of land-bound individuals would undoubtedly overlook. The nuanced configurations of the clouds, the distinctive quality of the morning's nascent light, and the specific behaviors exhibited by the seabirds congregating near the harbor. The prevailing conditions appeared auspicious for sailing, rather than necessitating arduous rowing, at least for the initial segment of the voyage. With seasoned expertise, he executed minor, precise adjustments to the sail rigging in anticipation of their departure. With a deft and practiced push against the sturdy dock, the vessel smoothly disengaged and glided purposefully into the expansive open water. Dorius assumed his customary position at the stern, his hand resting securely upon the steering oar, which functioned as the boat's essential rudder. He maintained a notable silence while navigating, rarely speaking unless compelled by considerations of safety or to draw his passengers' attention to an intriguing point of interest. His entire concentration remained intently fixed upon his demanding work, meticulously monitoring the precise direction of the wind, keenly observing for any subtle alterations in the water's coloration that could betray the presence of unseen hazards, and maintaining an unwavering awareness of the multitude of other vessels sharing these frequently congested maritime thoroughfares. The maritime routes were invariably teeming with numerous other vessels, each navigating its own course and contributing to the dynamic tapestry of these bustling waterways. These shared aquatic thoroughfares presented a constant demand for vigilance and expert handling, as a multitude of boats, from small fishing skiffs to larger merchant ships, traversed the same liquid paths, creating a vibrant yet potentially hazardous environment for all seafarers. The voyage unfolds with an almost serene uneventfulness, precisely the scenario Dorius consistently favors. With an expert touch, he executes minor, ceaseless alterations to their trajectory and the precise configuration of the sail, deftly counteracting the imperceptible yet persistent variations in the prevailing winds and underlying currents. For those unfamiliar with the intricacies of seafaring, the craft appears to glide along with minimal conscious direction, maintaining a consistent velocity as it traces the contours of the shoreline. Yet, only an individual possessing seasoned nautical acumen would discern the incessant sequence of nuanced judgments and precise calibrations that collectively forge this illusion of effortless advancement across the water. Upon traversing specific, familiar geographical markers, Dorius meticulously registers their passage against an intricate, internalized timetable he carries within his mind. His command of this particular maritime path is so profound and deeply ingrained that he possesses the remarkable ability to ascertain their exact rate of advancement purely through instinct and the sun's celestial placement, obviating the need for any complex navigational instruments. This profound understanding was not acquired through conventional academic instruction or structured schooling, but rather through countless seasons of diligent observation, coupled with the rich reservoir of practical insights and time-honored traditions generously imparted by elder, more experienced boatmen during his formative years in the profession. Approaching the zenith of the day, the atmospheric currents underwent an adverse transformation, rendering continued propulsion by sail impractical. Without uttering a single word of protest or expressing any dissatisfaction, Dorius seamlessly modified their method of transit, meticulously lowering the expansive canvas and enlisting the assistance of two of the more robust passengers to take up positions at the oars alongside him. This pragmatic shift, from harnessing the wind's energy to the more laborious act of rowing, was not framed as an unwelcome disruption or a source of vexation, but rather as an inherent and utterly natural adjustment, an intrinsic component of the dynamic responsiveness demanded by the ever-mutable nature of sea voyages. While the vessel was propelled by the synchronized sweep of the oars, their steady, repetitive motion established an almost mesmerizing cadence, providing an unobtrusive accompaniment to the hushed exchanges among the travelers. The official messenger, for instance, engaged in a gentle discourse, relaying recent tidings to the visiting women, while the merchant, from time to time, drew attention to noteworthy characteristics of the unfolding panorama along the coast. Throughout these interactions, Dorius maintained his unwavering concentration on the intricate task of piloting the craft, yet simultaneously assimilated their varied discussions, systematically augmenting his extensive mental repository of regional insights and community affairs. What prominent families anticipate receiving guests? Which settlements have undergone significant transformations lately? What commercial alliances are currently thriving and which appear to be weakening or dissolving? This diligent collection of intelligence is not driven by mere idle curiosity or a penchant for trivial chatter, but by an acute, pragmatic necessity. A boatman's very sustenance and prosperity are intrinsically linked to a nuanced comprehension of prevailing patterns in travel and trade. Such an understanding encompasses discerning precisely when specific categories of passengers might require transit services, identifying which maritime pathways could yield greater or lesser financial returns, and anticipating how shifts in governmental policies or economic conditions might impact the flow of sea-based commerce. Dorius assiduously accumulates these invaluable insights, meticulously constructing a comprehensive cognitive model of his operational sphere, a framework that far transcends the limited scope of purely navigational considerations. Upon making a brief halt within the sheltered confines of a diminutive cove, affording the strenuous rowers a respite and the passengers an opportunity to alleviate their physical stiffness, Dorius meticulously conducts a swift, yet thorough, examination of the boat. He scrupulously verifies the absence of any nascent leaks, a crucial routine, given that smaller craft of this historical period inherently necessitated consistent bailing, and confirms that the transported goods remain steadfastly fastened. Furthermore, he scrutinizes the oars for any developing fissures that could potentially exacerbate with sustained application. During this interlude, he exchanges succinct salutations with a fellow boatman whose vessel is traveling in the contravening direction. Their verbal interaction, though remarkably concise, is replete with vital intelligence, encompassing details about the prevailing water conditions further along their routes, the potential presence of any more substantial ships requiring cautious navigation, and whether the harbor administrators at their respective ports of call appear to be levying their charges with an unusual degree of zeal on this particular day. This unwritten, informal web of communication amongst the seafaring fraternity functions as an invaluable preliminary alert mechanism for any circumstance that might impinge upon the security of their transit. As they recommence their voyage, now benefiting from a more propitious breeze that permitted a reversion to the efficiency of sail power, one of the female passengers subtly inquired of Dorius whether he had encountered any particularly intriguing individuals among his recent clientele. Such an elliptically phrased query frequently functions as an unspoken invitation for boatmen to recount anecdotes concerning remarkable passengers or memorable occurrences. Dorius, in turn, furnished a succinct narrative detailing the conveyance of a distinguished sculptor and his almost finalized artistic creation. A substantial marble effigy that had necessitated an intricate and meticulous fastening arrangement to safeguard it against any potential harm arising from the boat's inherent oscillations. His manner of recounting the tale was decidedly subdued, emphasizing the pragmatic complexities and logistical hurdles rather than dwelling on any inherently dramatic or sensational aspects. This reserved approach mirrors a pervasive inclination among seasoned professional boatmen to prize voyages characterized by placid regularity above those marked by thrilling or extraordinary incidents. Within the rigorous confines of their occupation, excitement almost invariably signified peril, unforeseen challenges, or arduous circumstances. Consequently, the most commendable and successful journeys were those that could be succinctly encapsulated by a straightforward declaration. We set forth, navigated the waters, and reached our destination without incident, precisely as anticipated. With their arrival at the intended port drawing near in the late afternoon, Dorius meticulously redirected his complete focus towards the intricate procedure of disembarkation. The specific harbor at hand presented a more modest scale compared to the expansive Piraeus, offering a considerably sparser array of purpose-built mooring facilities. He painstakingly evaluated the prevailing water depths, the disposition of other craft already fastened, and any conceivable impediments before judiciously selecting his optimal trajectory for approach. The ultimate placement of the vessel demanded an exquisite mastery over its kinetic energy, sufficient impetus to attain the designated berth, yet precisely tempered to avert any potential for impact or damage. Having successfully and securely moored the boat, Dorius then extended his assistance to both the passengers and the freight as they prepared to disembark, exhibiting the identical meticulous solicitude he had previously demonstrated during the initial loading phase. He engaged in a concise discussion with Critius, the merchant, to ascertain the anticipated requirement for return transportation, thereby aiding in the meticulous scheduling that would both permit the thorough presentation of the samples and guarantee their departure, while ample daylight still illuminated the skies for a secure passage. Having fulfilled his obligation of conveying the outbound travelers and their consignment, Dorius's immediate imperative shifted to procuring a compensatory return payload, an essential step to ensure the financial viability of the entire round voyage. This endeavor could entail patiently awaiting individuals who had made prior arrangements, actively soliciting new fares from those conspicuously present at the harbor's edge, or diligently consulting with established patrons within this specific port who might possess ongoing transit requirements. On this particular occasion, he successfully located a farmer desiring the conveyance of several substantial oil amphorae to Athens, a commendably uncomplicated cargo that promised to distribute its weight advantageously within the confines of his craft. During the interim preceding his appointed time for departure, Dorius diligently engaged in a series of minor yet crucial upkeep activities, meticulously resecuring a section of rope exhibiting signs of fraying, carefully inspecting the points where the sail was affixed for any indications of abrasion or weakening, and executing small restorative repairs to a timber seat that had sustained a hairline fracture. These continuous, seemingly insignificant adjustments serve as a proactive measure, effectively averting the escalation of minor defects into more substantial issues, thereby significantly prolonging the operational lifespan and overall serviceability of the boat. Additionally, he seized this opportune moment to stroll towards a conveniently located purveyor of foodstuffs, where he procured a modest repast consisting of plain bread, a portion of cheese, and salted fish. His dietary preferences, much like the majority of his professional routines, were dictated by an unwavering commitment to utility and efficiency. Selecting provisions that possessed excellent keeping qualities, demanded no elaborate culinary preparation, and could be consumed expeditiously while simultaneously allowing him to maintain an unceasing vigil over his craft. He partook of his meal while perched precariously at the boat's periphery, his awareness oscillating between the simple sustenance before him and the dynamic environment encompassing him. The homeward voyage unfolded in a manner remarkably analogous to its outward counterpart, characterized by a fluid alternation between the propulsive force of the sail and the manual exertion of the oars, dictated by the prevailing environmental conditions. Throughout this leg of the journey, Dorius sustained his rigorous and unceasing scrutiny of both meteorological patterns and aquatic phenomena, thereby ensuring a passage that was simultaneously agreeable for all passengers and efficiently executed. As their vessel drew nigh to Piraeus in the nascent hours of evening, Dorius deftly threaded his way through the progressively densifying harbor traffic, guided by the serene assurance forged through extensive professional tenure. Subsequent to diligently fastening his boat and meticulously supervising the disembarkation of the ponderous oil amphorae, Dorius brought his day's labors to a close with a comprehensive concluding examination of the vessel, concurrently preparing it for the expeditions scheduled for the subsequent day. He carefully stowed away any objects susceptible to pilfering, coiled all lines with painstaking neatness to preclude any unwelcome entanglement, and draped protective coverings over specific exposed components to shield them from the accumulating dew or any unforeseen precipitation. Prior to retiring to his unassuming accommodations situated in close proximity to the harbor, he engaged in concise conversations with his fellow boatmen, who were likewise bringing their daily professional endeavors to a close. This interaction transcended mere collegial pleasantries. It represented yet another crucial avenue for the reciprocal exchange of intelligence, encompassing shared insights regarding evolving navigational circumstances, reports of any peculiar occurrences, and discussions pertaining to prospective commercial prospects. While a degree of rivalry for clientele occasionally characterized their professional dynamic, these individuals concurrently upheld a robust cooperative framework, founded upon a collective occupational identity and a reciprocal reliance during moments of exigency. Across the span of this entirely unremarkable day, a day reiterated with countless subtle permutations throughout the extensive panorama of Dorius's professional existence, he has unequivocally showcased a sophisticated amalgamation of aptitudes. These encompass expert navigation, astute meteorological forecasting, judicious management of human resources, shrewd commercial bargaining, fundamental vessel upkeep, and considerable physical stamina. Nevertheless, within the formal chronicles of historical documentation or the embellished narratives of legendary sagas, individuals of his ilk are customarily referenced merely as the boatmen, if indeed their presence merits any acknowledgement whatsoever. When the legendary hero Theseus achieved his triumphant return from the island of Crete, an unsung individual meticulously piloted that vessel securely across the vast expanse of the Aegean Sea. Similarly, upon Odysseus's long-awaited arrival at his homeland of Ithaca, an anonymous mariner was responsible for the skillful operation of the craft that ultimately conveyed him. And when the inaugural Olympic Theoroi, the revered official messengers, embarked on their mission to proclaim the hallowed truce for the impending games, an unrecorded boatman provided the vital transportation between the various coastal urban centers. These countless, nameless enablers were the indispensable architects of the intricate linkages, essential transits, and crucial commercial interactions that fundamentally shaped the very essence of Greek civilization. Perhaps we are compelled to contemplate the myriad of unacknowledged individuals who, in our contemporary era, enable our own ceaseless movements across the globe. The dedicated professionals who skillfully manage our sophisticated transportation networks, diligently preserve our foundational infrastructure, and seamlessly facilitate our travels, encompassing both tangible physical transits and abstract metaphorical odysseys. Much like Dorius and his ancient maritime counterparts, these unsung heroes forge the indispensable conduits that permit the harmonious operation of all other societal functions, even when their distinct contributions remain largely unheralded within our prevailing cultural chronicles. These mundane arenas, wherein everyday citizens discharged their crucial responsibilities, served as the bedrock supporting the more illustrious occurrences and prominent personalities we habitually recall, thereby presenting compelling insights into the foundational mechanics of the ancient world. The ongoing intellectual pursuit of revising and enriching perspectives on the ancient world remains a dynamic and crucial facet of contemporary scholarship. Esteemed academics and researchers across a spectrum of disciplines are perpetually unveiling novel insights and rigorously challenging previously entrenched narratives, thereby significantly broadening our collective comprehension of bygone civilizations. This vibrant intellectual endeavor is frequently propelled by groundbreaking archaeological discoveries, the innovative application of sophisticated scientific methodologies, and an increasingly inclusive analytical framework that transcends conventional geographical and ethnocentric boundaries. Consequently, the intricate historical tapestries of antiquity are progressively being rewoven, presenting a more nuanced, multifaceted, and ultimately more accurate portrayal of humanity's distant past.